Chapter 2573. Up until his death, Marshal Kun did not tell Xiaohua why he was so ruthless towards Xiaohua. Marshal Kun did not even mention anything about Kun Fian. However, from Guanju's mouth, Xiaohua had already heard it clearly. It was definitely this fellow who had informed Marshal Kun and wanted Marshal Kun to kill him, or snatch the incomplete Grand Universe shifting token from his hands. Xiaohua could even feel from Hu Guanju's mouth that it was not necessarily Immortal Jing Ru who had instructed Marshal Kun to kill him, but Hu Guanju, who always liked to take credit from Immortal Jing Ru, had asked Marshal Kun to kill him. Xiaohua could even vaguely guess that the person who had intercepted and killed the thunder-controlling sect disciples after the Feather Immortal gathering was probably Hu Guanju. Humph! A hint of coldness flashed through the eyes of Xiaohua, who had always been ruthless to his enemies. He forcefully suppressed his desire to kill Hu Guanni, and then pretended as if nothing had happened. He nodded and said, "This Kun understands. Yes, Master has already instructed us not to interfere in this matter. He has his own ways." Hu Guanchen didn't notice anything at all, and instructed. "I understand." Xiaohua asked again, "When will your master arrive? Now that we have reached the critical point of the war, I feel that the cultivators of my sect will suffer a great loss. We need the nascent soul masters to come to Sentry City as soon as possible." "Master!" "Haha!" Hu Guanju raised his eyebrows and a trace of imperceptible surprise flashed across his eyes. He smiled and said, "My master is ready. He will immediately rush to Sentry City as soon as the sect leader gives the order. At that time, fellow Taoist Kun will have the chance to meet my master and have him guide you on your refining skills." "Yes, yes," Xiaohua said with a smile. "This Kun admires your master's artifact refining skills. If this Kun can obtain some pointers from him, this Kun will definitely benefit greatly." "Well said, well said." Hu Guanju glanced at the emissary and opened his mouth slightly, as if he was transmitting his voice. The emissary nodded, but his face was covered in fog. "Let's go, fellow Kun!" Hu Guanju waved his hand and said, "The emissary and I will accompany you back to Sentry City. We will wait outside the city. Take out your storage bag." "All right." Xiaohua nodded. He flew up and said with a smile, "I Kun will lead the way. Fellow Taoist Kun, please." The emissary smiled and raised his hand. His figure also flew up and landed on Xiaohua's right. Hu Guanju also flew up and landed on Xiaohua's left. "Oh, by the way, fellow Taoist Kun." As Xiaohua flew for a while, Hu Guanma suddenly remembered something. He patted his storage bag and said, "Before I left, my master asked me to bring you a magic treasure. It's what you wanted when you went there. It's just that my master hasn't been able to successfully refine it until the beginning of this year. I'll give it to fellow Taoist now." "Hee, many thanks to your honorable master." Xiaohua was happy. He didn't think that he would be able to obtain a transcendent treasure before he left, so how could he not be happy? Still, he said, "That old man is really—" However, before he could finish speaking, he saw Hu Guanqing take out something from his storage bag. It was not a Dharma treasure, but a spirit talisman with extremely powerful dharmic powers. Xiaohua was very familiar with the magical power fluctuations of this spiritual talisman. Wasn't it the protective spiritual talisman that Li Qingshu had used that day, the Hand of Nascent Soul? "This is bad. How did this guy discover this young master's flaw?" Seeing this, Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He saw that Hu Guanju had been waiting for this moment. As soon as the Hand of Nascent Soul took out his storage bag, he immediately activated his dharmic powers. A hurricane was born from the spirit talisman, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within 1,000 feet rushed into the spirit talisman. The spirit talisman borrowed the force of the wind and suddenly expanded. In an instant, it was several feet in size. Moreover, the Hand of Nascent Soul flashed with brilliance, and a powerful restrictive force appeared spontaneously. Looking at the emissary to Xiaohua's right, he waved his hand, and a ray of golden light flew out from his hand. A small palm-sized pagoda flew into the air. The small pagoda's brilliance was unusually dazzling. When the spiritual chi of heaven and earth surged by the hand of nascent souls swept past the small pagoda, half of it was absorbed by the small pagoda. Strands of jade were born from the edges of the small pagoda, and a suction force that was not inferior to the restrictive force of the hand of nascent soul was born from the bottom of the small pagoda. The force rotated and was about to envelop Xiaohua. Hiss! Xiaohua was shocked and immediately moved. His figure suddenly flashed, and almost an afterimage appeared behind him. His figure was as strange as the wind. Hu Guanqing had deliberately distanced himself from him by several feet, but in the blink of an eye, he was already closing in on him. Wu! Seeing that he was getting closer, Xiaohua raised his hand, took out the wishful staff, and swung it at Hu Guanqing's head. Xiaohua's wind escape was too fast. Although Hu Guanqing made the first move, Xiaohua arrived first. Before Hu Guanqing's hand of nascent soul could move, the wishful staff was already in front of Hu Guanqing's eyes. Hu Guanqing had no choice but to activate the talisman with one hand and slap his forehead with the other. A dazzling sword light flew out and met Xiaohua's wishful staff head-on. With a cracking sound, the flying sword was hit by the wishful staff, and a crack appeared on the flying sword. Hiss! Hu Guanqing's face flushed red. His figure quickly retreated. He wanted to escape from Xiaohua's wishful staff. Attack! Xiaohua shouted. Instead of advancing, he retreated and flew toward the emissary who had taken out his magic treasure. What is he doing? Hu Guanqing was slightly taken aback, but his heart still relaxed. He hurriedly activated the hand of nascent soul. However, just as Xiaohua turned to attack the emissary, two green and red flying swords flew out of Xiaohua's mouth. One in front and one behind, they chased each other and pierced toward Hu Guanqing with incomparable speed. Ah! Flying swords? Hu Guanqing didn't have time to retrieve his flying swords. When he saw Xiaohua attack with flying swords, he couldn't help but be taken aback. But when he saw the two flying swords piercing toward him at an unimaginable speed, Hu Guanqing was scared out of his wits. Dodge! Hu Guanqing only had this thought in his mind. He didn't even have time to activate the talisman. However, the distance between him and Xiaohua was too close, and the flying speed of the Dream Executioner and the Mountain Splitter was too fast. In addition, the strength of the two flying swords was too great. Just as the thought of dodging arose in Hu Guanqing's mind, the two swords had already pierced his body. With a PU, the Dream Executioner was the first to strike. Hu Guanqing's protective golden light flashed and was pierced through by the Dream Executioner. Woo! With a flash of brilliance, the Dream Executioner was blocked by Hu Guanqing's protective magic treasure. Although the huge impact made Hu Guanqing feel incomparable pain, the Dream Executioner was blocked in the end. Hiss! Immediately after, the second sword light arrived. The power of the Mountain Splitter increased by a lot under the Dream Executioner's cooperation. The flashing protective magic treasure only resisted for a few breaths of time before the light was extinguished, and the Mountain Splitter pierced through. Pooh! With a muffled sound, the Mountain Splitter pierced through Hu Guanqing's chest and came out from his back. Hu Guanqing, an early golden core cultivator, was so easily killed by Xiaohua. The swollen nascent soul hand fell along with Hu Guanqing's corpse. Like a deflated bubble, it rapidly shrank and finally turned into a talisman that fell beside the corpse. Xiaohua turned around and attacked the enveil. He didn't even check on Hu Guanqing. Since he attacked, he absolutely couldn't let the envoy escape, even if he was the Martial Kuan. Who would have thought that the thing that made Xiaohua's soul fly out of his body would happen? Seeing Xiaohua raise the wishful staff, the enchanting envoy's eyes suddenly widened. A brilliant brilliance flashed through his eyes. Then, he cried out in extreme shock. You, who are you? You actually know the transfiguration technique? As he spoke, the shocked envoy waved his hand. The small pagoda quickly fell, and his figure strangely floated up. Xiaohua's speed was extremely fast, but the envoy's small pagoda had already been raised and blocked in front of the wishful staff. The suction force of the small pagoda was amazing. Xiao Hua's body shook continuously, and the brilliance of his protective body flashed. But when the wishful staff hit the suction force, the small pagoda flew out. At this time, the envoy's figure was like smoke and also like a ghost. He only flashed a few times in the air and chased after the small pagoda. He grabbed the small pagoda in his hand, and then without looking back, a trace of green smoke appeared around his body, and his whole figure disappeared. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiao Hua turned pale with fright. This was the first time he had seen such a strange flying technique. Moreover, this emissary had actually seen through his disguise technique with a single sentence. How could this not surprise him? How could he let the envoy escape? Xiao Hua yelled, his figure flashed, and a stick hit the place where the emissary disappeared. Unfortunately, the stick hit empty air, and not even a hair of the envoy was hit. Xiao Hua was anxious. His figure also flashed and disappeared, as if he was chasing after the envoy. However, in a moment, Xiao Hua's figure appeared one zhang away, and his face was full of confusion and anxiety. "Who is this envoy? He actually has such a powerful flying technique." Xiao Hua was really anxious. If I had known this earlier, I would have killed this person first. Or at least not reveal any trace of the wishful staff. However, now that things had come to this, where was there a special medicine for regret? Even if Xiao Hua opened his illusion breaker eyes and looked around, he still could not find the whereabouts of the envoy. Humph! Xiao Hua snorted coldly, and his heart was still unwilling. He felt that his illusion breaker eyes should be able to see where the envoy fled, but he did not know how to check. "Even if you know that I am pretending to be Marshal Kuan, so what? You don't know who I am," Xiao Hua said coldly. "This envoy did not go to the Dao Sword battlefield to help, but ran here. There must be something shameful. This so-called alliance leader was probably something that couldn't be seen in public. I am not even afraid of a nascent soul cultivator, so why would I be afraid of some bullshit alliance leader?" Thinking, Xiao Hua flew back to the place where he had killed Hu Guanmu. With a wave of his hand, the intact nascent soul hand talisman fell into his hand. Xiao Hua looked at it, and carefully stored it in his space. -9. Chapter 2574. After that, Xiao Hua picked up Hu Guan's storage bag and checked it. Sure enough, not only were there materials to repair the Grand Cosmos shifting token, there were also materials to refine the Thunderbolt, and many other precious materials for refining tools. "Humph, I didn't come here in vain!" Xiao Hua snorted coldly and pointed his finger. A wisp of true samadhi fire fell on the corpse, burning it until only a golden core was left. Looking at the golden core that was only the size of a grain of rice, Xiao Hua sneered. "You're just an early-stage golden core cultivator, yet you dared to scheme against a middle-stage golden core cultivator. You're really tired of living." However, how did this guy discover my flaw? This was something that Xiao Hua couldn't figure out. Xiao Hua originally wanted to call Goldie out of the space, but he looked around vigilantly, and was still not at ease. With a wave of his hand, he sent the golden core into the space. What made Xiao Hua flabbergasted was that Goldie, who had always liked golden cores, sniffed this little golden core and didn't pay attention to it at all. It turned its head to the side. Oh my god, it doesn't even care about golden cores. Xiao Hua smacked his lips and thought. However, the quality of this Hu Guanda's golden core is indeed not good. No wonder Goldie doesn't like it. Don't waste it, Xiao Hua thought as he sent the golden core to the duck floating on the water. The duck opened its tender yellow beak and swallowed the golden core into its stomach without even opening its eyes. After Xiao Hua looked around and found no flaws, he turned around and wanted to fly away. However, just as he turned around, his gaze fell on a stone that was piled up in the shape of the word Quan. 100 feet away. Eh? This is... Xiao Hua's eyes lit up as he suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out a jade slip from the space. He immersed his divine sense in it and looked at it for a moment. Then, he flew to the stone and grabbed it. A layer of silver light appeared on the stone, and a palm-sized square cauldron appeared. Strange. Xiao Hua pinched his chin and said curiously, "There are strange things every year, but there are especially many this year. This thing, why is it still here? It seems dozens of years have passed, right?" After looking at the small cauldron overflowing with silver light for a moment, Xiao Hua tried to throw the jade slip into it. Buzz! The small cauldron began to emit a brilliance, and a wave of faint smoke emerged from the jade slip. Soon after, the jade slip flew out of the small cauldron, and the small cauldron once again turned into a silver light that landed on the stone, and slowly disappeared. Looking at the jade slip that was emitting smoke, Xiao Hua immersed his divine sense into it. A moment later, Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. He looked inside the sword tomb and muttered to himself, "What is this jade system trying to sell?" Young Master remembered that he had evil intentions towards Young Master that day. Why did he come to the sword tomb? Since I'm here, I'll go take a look. What kind of waves can a Foundation establishment brat cause? Besides, my whereabouts have already been exposed by that bullshit emissary. If I don't go out and hide, should I go back to Sky Patrol City and walk right into their trap? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's figure moved like lightning and flew in the direction indicated by the jade slip. After Xiao Hua's figure disappeared for an hour, a wave of fluctuation flashed in midair, and Xiao Hua's figure appeared there again. His divine sense once again swept across the area within 100 miles. Damn it, could it be that the emissary really left? Xiao Hua actually made a feint and returned here again to see if the emissary was hiding somewhere and not escaping at that time. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, Xiao Hua was helpless and could only resentfully fly up again. After more than half a day, a faint figure appeared beside a low-lying mountain rock a few miles away from here. It was the emissary who had disappeared. However, at this time, a trace of horror appeared on the emissary's pale face. "I really didn't expect this. This guy actually knows the transfiguration technique. Moreover, the thing in his hand seems to be a demonic artifact. This demonic artifact is different from ordinary demonic artifacts. It can actually send the demon subduing pagoda flying. This guy. Who is he? However, since he can kill Marshal Kuan, he must have some grudges with the thunder-controlling sect. He might even have a grudge with a Dao sect cultivator." The emissary's eyes turned. Yes, he used a sword cultivator's secret technique to kill Huguan Mu. But his flying sword seems to be different from a sword cultivator's. Maybe he's a bird cultivator? Or a beast cultivator? It seems that only Huan country swordsmen are active in the vicinity of the sword catacomb. This guy is undoubtedly a swordsman. The emissary was still in a state of shock. Seeing that there was no more movement nearby, he quietly flew up, still thinking to himself. But as he flew, his body suddenly shook again, as if he had thought of something. That's not right. If this guy is a swordsman, why is he waiting here alone for Huguan Mu? Besides, why does he need so many of Huguan Mu's refining materials? The most inconceivable thing is that when I saw this guy, I already used my divine sense to investigate him. He is undoubtedly a Dao sect cultivator. When did the transfiguration technique reach such a miraculous level? Who on earth is this guy? The emissary was really scratching his head. This won't do. Such a strange cultivator, no matter if he's a cultivator or a sword cultivator, will be detrimental to my heavenly devil sect and my sect master. I must report this to Lord Sect Master. As he spoke, the emissary got rid of the Mimi. It was a young cultivator dressed in an ordinary Taoist robe, with delicate features and an extremely refined expression on his face. He looked like he was in his 20s. Who was this emissary? Wasn't he the deputy sect master Zhang Jihao that heavenly devil sect Zhang Qi had personally appointed? After Zhang Jihao thought about it, his figure immediately turned into green smoke and disappeared. After waiting for an hour, he flew out from a stone crack in a snowy plain. His originally pale face was even more bloodless. Then, Zhang Jihao looked at the sky and said in a low voice, Xiong Huasong sent a message, saying that he found clues to the Grand Universe shifting token. Damn it, isn't it that Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect? Wouldn't it be fine if he directly killed him and took the token? Why did he have to make this trip? This Xiao Hua is also the reincarnation of a praying mantis. He should have died in the netherworld. Why is he still alive now? If that Zhu Qinghe knew, wouldn't he desperately cover it up? Ha ha, things are getting more and more interesting. Yes, it was indeed interesting. Not only did Zhang Zhihao have such thoughts, but Zhang Qishao, who was far away in the Lian country, also had such thoughts. At this time, Zhang Qishao was sitting on a hill. The hill was neither tall nor big, only a few feet high and several feet wide. Above the hill, the bright scenic bell emitted an orange-yellow brilliance that covered Zhang Qishao and a jade table. On top of the jade table, there was a strange wine bottle and several jade cups. The light red wine in the jade cups emitted a clear wine fragrance that filled the entire light barrier. Zhang Qishao lazily sat on the white blanket, his left hand holding a jade cup. Just as the cup left his mouth, those slightly squinted eyes, the smiling corners of his mouth, and the slight tapping of the index and middle fingers of his right hand on the jade table, all of them showed that he was enjoying himself. This small mound was just one of the many yellow hills of varying sizes in this boundless wasteland. Zhang Qishao didn't know how many similar mounds there were in front of her, but she didn't know how many of them there were behind her. Xiao Hua, this guy, what is he doing? He actually killed the Imperial Thunder Sect's Marshal Kuan? Zhang Qishao naturally received Zhang Jihao's secret report. The corner of his mouth faintly flickered with mockery. This guy even said that I was vicious and merciless. What about himself? He didn't even put his own master in his eyes and easily killed them. Is this the attitude of a junior? Moreover, this is a great battle of Dao cultivators. Your hands are itchy, can't you kill a few more sword cultivators? Even if Marshal Kun wants to curry favor with Taoist Jing Ru and has some thoughts about you. But could it be that Marshal Kun has already made his move? Zhang Qishao suddenly came to a realization. Damn, this little junior brother of mine is really amazing. Marshal Kun is a golden core cultivator, and he already made his move. Didn't this guy Xiao Hua just build his foundation? He can actually escape from a golden core cultivator's palm. Not simple, not simple. If it wasn't for Xiao Hua, that whatever stick, even I, wouldn't have guessed that Marshal Kun was actually Xiao Hua in disguise. Where did Xiao Hua's disguise technique come from? He's actually much more powerful than I am. It seems like my little junior brother's background isn't simple. Fortunately, this is my little junior brother. If he was my enemy, let alone an enemy, with such a person on Xiaoyu continent, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Fortunately. Also, what does our Vice Alliance leader Luo want to do? He actually has dealings with people of my demon sect. My heavenly demon sect's vice sect leader Yin Meng seems to be under the Vice Alliance leader? Or maybe he's here to contact Vice Alliance leader Luo? Vice sect leader Yin has been very busy recently. Unfortunately, his Grand Cosmos shifting token has always been in my little junior brother's storage bag. This guy can't catch up to Xiao Hua's fleeing footsteps no matter how hard he tries. Should I tell him that Xiao Hua went to the Sword Tomb? Or maybe Xiong Huasong will tell him without me informing him? Not necessarily. Zhang Qishao shook her head again. I'm afraid Xiong Huasong doesn't know about Yin Meng, right? Xiong Huasong can only tell Zhang Jihao about Xiao Hua, but he can't directly inform Yin Meng. But that's not right. According to Xiao Hua, he obtained this Grand Cosmos shifting token at the Feather Immortal Assembly. This thing should have been sent to the Changbai sect for Taoist Jingyu, right? This Xiong Huasong is a cultivator of the Profound Sky sect, so how did he know that the Grand Cosmos shifting token is with Xiao Hua? It must have been a disciple of the Profound Sky sect who handed this thing to the unlucky Fan Tong at the Feather Immortal Assembly. Lu Weigang has already said this. Taoist Jingyu is extremely protective, so he will definitely avenge Fan Tong. Looks like my little junior brother's situation is not good. Since Zhang Jihao noticed Xiao Hua, that old Vice Alliance leader Luo naturally also saw Xiao Hua. Taoist Jingyu is about to head to the Sky Patrol City. Little junior brother is surrounded by enemies. -9. Chapter 2575. I've already told him to come and be my heavenly demon sex vice-sect leader. I can also send my disciples to help him. Now, I have to find a way to hide my connection with him. Oh right, what's the name of the disciple who sent the elixir to Xiao Hua? I can't let him live a moment longer. This guy only knows how to flaunt his superiority and fight alone. How could he know how wonderful it is to have the heavenly demon sect as his backing? Look, I don't have to do it myself. Naturally, my subordinates will deliver the Tai Ching sex wine. Xiao Hua wants to drink it, but can he drink it? Alas, I don't know how Yutong is doing. I don't know if the words I taught her could deceive those swords. However, even if she couldn't deceive them, they wouldn't do anything out of line to her, right? Speaking of which, it's strange. Where did Zhang Yuhe go? She's really dead and nowhere to be seen. It's very strange. Just when Zhang Qishao was both intoxicated and worried, she suddenly felt a jolt in her heart. She looked up and saw that not far ahead, a scarlet mist flashed, and a messaging charm appeared outside the light shield. Pa! Zhang Qishao snapped her fingers, and a small crack appeared on the light shield. The message talisman rushed in through the crack, and naturally, a few strands of the yellow dust in the sky also seeped in. Oh! Zhang Qingxiao's divine sense entered the message talisman and looked at it. A strange look appeared on her face. She snorted coldly and waved her hand. The message talisman flew out again. Humph, the great vice sect leader Yin of the heavenly demon sect is coming. He's really arrogant. He didn't even write anything on the message talisman, only the word Yin. Damn it, it seems that he really thinks he's the first vice sect leader of the heavenly demon sect. Zhang Qishao sneered and waved her hand to destroy the spirit wine that had fallen into the yellow dust. However, just as her fingers touched the wine cup, she stopped and a smile appeared on her face. After a while, a faint black shadow appeared in the yellow dust. The shape of the shadow couldn't be seen. It looked like a human figure, but also like a floating mist. When the shadow got closer, the figure was revealed. Io, vice sect leader Yin! Zhang Qishao hurriedly got up and waved her hand, as if she was lifting up a curtain, parting the brilliance of the bright scenic bell. Please come in, please come in! It had only been 10 months since they last met, but the vice sect master's invisibility technique had improved by leaps and bounds. Fortunately, it's noon right now. If it was dusk or night, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to see it. Yin Meng's lips curled into a proud smile. She didn't care about the brilliance of the bright scenic bell at all. Then, she went in without hesitation. It was as if he didn't care that he had entered the range of Zhang Qingxiao's magical weapon. Zhang Qishao understood that it was not because Yin Ming was not worried about her, but because Yin Ming was extremely confident in his own cultivation, and was not afraid that Zhang Qishao would do anything to him. Yin Ming stood on the silk carpet and glanced around with a smile. Sect leader Zhang really knows how to enjoy life. Tasting the sweet bamboo liquid in this Lian country filled with yellow soil really makes this old man envious. This old man is troubled by the trivial matters of Tiangang sect every day. I really want to learn from sect master Zhang and steal half a day of leisure. Zhang Qishao wasn't angry because Yin Ming didn't call her Lord Sect Master, and only called her Sect Leader Zhang. Instead, she was extremely polite. She cupped her hands and said, How can this Zhang be qualified? It's only because of some Yin Zhe that I can become the sect leader of Heavenly Demon Sect. When it comes to talent and governance, how can I compare to Vice Sect Leader Yin? As for the cultivation of demonic arts, don't even mention it. My Heavenly Demon 13 sect still has to rely on Vice Sect Leader Yin, this kind of person with outstanding talent. Especially Vice Sect Leader Yin, who is the first Vice Sect Leader of Heavenly Demon Sect. All of the sect's affairs, no matter how big or small, rely on Vice Sect Leader Yin's participation. The capable do more work, it doesn't matter. Yi Meng sat down unceremoniously, and Zhang Qishao hurriedly waved his hand and said, "This sect leader has just fallen. If Vice Sect Leader Yin doesn't mind, please drink a few cups, how about it?" Ha, thank you Sect Leader Zhang. To be able to make Sect Leader Zhang personally pour wine, this heavenly demon sect, this old man is the first. He laughed sinisterly and made a grabbing motion with his hand. 5 wisps of faint black mist flew out from his fingertips, grabbing the spirit wine from the wine cups. He opened his mouth, and the scarlet liquid fell into his mouth. Phew! After the wine entered his stomach, Yi Meng let out a long breath and praised. Sure enough, it's Taiqing Sect's famous sweet bamboo liquid. It really lives up to its reputation. If Vice Sect Leader Yin likes it, you can drink a few more cups. Zhang Qishao reached out and personally raised the wine cup, poured wine for Yi Meng and said, "This sect leader only has this little hobby. I didn't expect Vice Sect Leader Yin to like it too? Who wouldn't like such a good wine?" Yi Meng rolled his eyes at Zhang Qishao and said, "However, if you want to drink such good wine often, there must be a price." Yes. Zhang Qishao pretended not to know what Yi Meng said, and raised his thumb and said, "It turns out that Vice Sect Leader Yin is also an expert in this field. This sect leader came here to drink the sweet bamboo liquid because this spirit wine is brewed from the pure earth attribute sweet bamboo fruit. It can only be drunk in a place with extremely rich earth attribute spirit chi of heaven and earth to taste its best taste." Oh? Obviously Yi Meng didn't know this story, but he also raised his eyebrows and said, "So Sect Leader Zhang also knows about it." This sect leader just found out. Zhang Qishao smiled wholeheartedly, and it seemed that he didn't change his attitude because of Yi Meng's attitude. Yi Meng poured a few more cups, and Zhang Qishao also accompanied at the same time. After a long while, he asked tentatively, "By the way, Vice Sect Leader Yin came here from afar. What's the matter?" "It's not a big matter. He just wanted to ask about the establishment of the Heavenly Demon Sect." Yi Meng seemed to be asking a junior. "Oh, this matter is a big matter of my Heavenly Demon Sect." Zhang Qishao smiled and said, "Although my Heavenly Demon Sect has been established long ago, and even has some influence on the Dawn Rain continent, it's not completely open yet. Under the planning of the various Vice Sect leaders, especially Vice Sect Leader Yin, our sect leader has already made arrangements according to the previous discussion. All the preparations have been completed, and it can be said that everything is ready except for the east wind." Good. When the nascent soul cultivators from the 3 cultivation countries go to the Sky Patrol City, my Heavenly Demon Sect will be established when they don't care. When the battle between the Tao cultivators is over, my Heavenly Demon Sect will also have a firm foothold. What can the dozens of Tao sects do to my Heavenly Demon Sect?" Yi Meng said proudly. Zhang Qingxiao's face showed a trace of hesitation, and there was a trace of fear as he said in a low voice, "Actually, Vice Sect Leader Yin, this sect leader feels that the current situation of my Heavenly Demon Sect is already very good. The number of disciples is slowly increasing, and the influence of the 13 demon sects is also gradually expanding. There's no need for us to establish a sect right away. It won't be too late to establish a sect after our strength is consolidated, and when we can completely resist the Tao sect, right? If those nascent soul cultivators send their disciples to annihilate us, this sect leader is afraid that the good situation from before will be gone forever." "Humph, what do you know?" Yi Meng sneered. "This is the best time for my Heavenly Demon Sect to establish a sect. The Tao sect has placed their focus on the sword cultivators, and they don't have the strength to take care of my demon sect. The sword Tao battle? You don't have to worry. As the saying goes, to kill 1,000 enemies, you lose 800 of your own men. When those Tao sect cultivators extricate themselves from the sword Tao battle, their strength will be almost depleted. How will they have the energy to attack my demon sect? Once my demon sect stands out in the Dawn Rain mainland, the number of disciples joining my demon sect will be 100 or 1,000 times more than before. The 13 demon sects will soon become an existence comparable to the 13 cultivation sects. When that time comes, even if the Tao sects have the strength to annihilate us, will they still dare to do so? Will they still dare to start a Taoist demon war? Yes, this sect leader is not very proficient in these things. Zhang Qishao smiled awkwardly and said, "Even thinking about it gives me a headache. The demons of the demon realm are not good at these things." Yes, this old man knows this. That's why I really lowered myself to help you. Yin Meng nodded and pointed to the west, saying mysteriously, "This old man received some fragmentary information. Over there, the people who are coming, I'm afraid they'll be coming soon. We have to establish the 13 demon sects before they come and let them see that we have a great situation here." "Ah? They're coming so soon?" Zhang Qishao was extremely delighted, but also a little panicked. "Sect leader Zhang, don't be afraid." Yin Meng seemed to have seen through Zhang Qingxiao's thoughts and said with a smile, "You've established the 13 demon sects. With such a great contribution, no matter who comes, won't they want you to be the sect leader? Besides, even if it's me, I'm now the deputy sect leader of the heavenly demon sect. I'll definitely put in a good word for sect leader Zhang." "Thank you, deputy sect leader Yin." Zhang Qishao even bowed and thanked him. "Everything depends on deputy sect leader Yin. If the people from that side come, you must properly introduce them to this sect leader." "That's natural." Yin Meng stood up and said, "This is also an important matter for this old man to come here today. You just have to do well in establishing the sect. No matter how badly you do other things, nothing will happen." Yes, this sect leader understands." Zhang Qishao was still respectful. "Which sword cultivator's little lady?" Yin Meng looked around and said with a smile, "Why don't you call her out for this old man to see? This sect leader is already a little tired of looking at her. She wanted to go sightseeing, so this sect leader sent a few disciples to follow her. I'm afraid she's already in Meng Kingdom." Zhang Qishao said with a smile. "Oh? So sect leader Zhang is already tired of her?" Yin Meng's eyes showed a trace of a smile, and he looked Zhang Qishao up and down and said, "This old man thinks that the little lady is not bad. This sect leader knows, Zhang Qishao smiled apologetically. "Wait for this sect leader's arrangements in the future." Ha, thank you sect leader Zhang." Yin Meng laughed loudly, stood up, and cupped his hands, saying, "This old man still has a lot of things to do in Tiangang sect, so I won't accompany sect leader Zhang. Goodbye. -9. Chapter 2576. I'll send Vice Sect Leader Yin off. Zhang Qishao respectfully opened the bright scenic bell's light screen and said with a smile, "No need." Yin Meng waved his hand and said, "With such yellow dust, I still have to use my invisibility technique. I'm afraid you won't be able to catch up." That's right. Then I'll send Vice Sect Leader off with my eyes." Zhang Qishao suddenly understood and slapped his own forehead with a smile. Zhang Qishao waited for Yin Meng to turn into a wisp of smoke and fly away in a seemingly slow but swift manner. She then closed the light screen of the bright scenic bell. The corners of her mouth curled into a cold smile as a trace of viciousness surfaced in her eyes. With a wave of her hand, a bright red flame flashed. Not only were the jade cups and wine bottles used by Yin Meng turned into dust, even the jade table and silk blanket were turned into dust. Zhang Qishao took out another silk blanket and wine bottle and sat down again. "Yin Meng, that old bastard, bullied me too much." Zhang Qishao swore inwardly, but then he laughed again. It was a very carefree laugh. "Isn't this what I want? In this world, people without strength can only be looked down upon by others. They can only be humiliated by others and feel unreconciled. But am I that kind of person? Didn't you see that my junior brother could casually kill a middle-stage golden core cultivator? He even used the face of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator to fool around in the Imperial Thunder sect. Since he dared to kill Marshal Kuan, he naturally dared to kill Qian Mo naturally. Damn it, that Tu Hong wouldn't be here to kill, right? Xiaohua killed so many famous cultivators, but he still calmly stayed among the cultivators and no one suspected him. Wasn't he just relying on his cultivation to cover up? I can easily kill Yin Meng, but what about the people behind him? That bullshit Vice Alliance leader Luo, and those devil sect people who are coming, and there seems to be a lot more. How can I kill them all at once? Forget it, a real man knows when to yield and when not. I still let Yin Meng look down on me. So what? Zhang Qishao reached out and picked up a cup of sweet bamboo liquor and laughed. Aren't you all still being played by me in the palm of my hand? Other than me and senior sister, who else knows that Xiaohua is my junior brother? Other than Zhang Jihao, even Vice Alliance leader Luo himself doesn't know that it's just my clone. Ha ha! What a joke! Zhang Qishao laughed heartily for a moment, and then his expression calmed down again. Even though it was extremely rare for him to reveal his inner thoughts like this, if Yin Meng hadn't mentioned Zhang Yutong just now, how could he have had such an opportunity? The yellow dust outside the light barrier was still the same. Even when night fell, not only did it show no signs of stopping, it even began to wreak havoc, dyeing the horizon yellow. Originally, one could still see the desolation of blood, but now, it had turned into an earthy yellow color, giving off a very filthy feeling. Forget it! Zhang Qishao waved her hand and stood up. She sighed. In the bleak dusk, the sunset always makes people nostalgic. Unfortunately, it's Yudong's favorite. When she was here, even the heavens took care of her. Today, I came here to watch the sunset and wanted to feel it. Who knew that not only would Yin Meng disturb me, even the heavens wouldn't give me face? Just as Zhang Qishao stood up, a scarlet communication talisman landed in front of him. Zhang Qishao impatiently reached out and took the communication talisman. After looking at it for a moment, his expression turned serious. He raised his head and pondered for a moment. Then, with a tap of his hand, the communication talisman flew away. Then, Zhang Qishao stood there straight and looked to the west with his hands clasped behind his back. In that earthy yellow area, half a hazy setting sun slowly set. Disciple greets sect master! A similarly faint black fog drifted over from the yellow dust. When it landed on the ground, the black fog didn't hesitate to kneel on the ground, revealing a humble figure. In his hand was a pitch-black magic slip, and he held it above his head with both hands. This humble one has a jade slip for Lord. This humble one didn't dare to delay and specially sent it over. Oh? Zhang Qishao was slightly taken aback. With a wave of his hand, the magic slip fell into his hand. However, he didn't care about it. He glanced at it briefly and threw it on the jade table beside him. Then, he looked at the disciple kneeling on the ground and snorted coldly. He asked, how is the situation with the establishment of my demonic 13 sects? Why aren't you properly taking care of things in the country of Xi? Why did you come to the country of Lian for an insignificant jade slip? Yes, sect master understands. That disciple lowered his head and didn't dare to raise it. He carefully said, the 3 aristocratic families in the country of Xi, Hui Xian's Fan family and Fan Qiu's Zhao family have long been under our control. Now, we only need to change their recruitment. As for Jiarant's Zhao family, we have already arranged disciples nearby. As long as sect master gives the order, this humble one's disciples can quickly control Jiarant's Zhao family. These 3 families are in the shape of the character. They can be the foundation of our demonic 13 sects in the country of Xi. Good! You all have contributed greatly to the establishment of the demonic 13 sects. Zhang Qishao nodded. What about the country of Meng? This, according to sect master's arrangement, the foundation of the 3 aristocratic families, Qian City's Ming family, Mo City's Qi family, and Yi City's Qian family, will be the foundation of our demonic 13 sects in the country of Ming. However, other than the Yi City's Qian family, which currently has a 90% chance, the other 2 families only have a 50% chance. After all, there are other cultivation sects nearby these 2 families. This humble one is afraid that our demonic 13 sects will make a move. They may not just stand by and watch. You don't have to worry about this. Zhang Qixiao waved his hand. If they know what's good for them, then let's forget about it. If they dare to make a move, then we'll just eliminate them all. Yes, this humble one understands. That disciple said again. The establishment of sects in the country of Lian is much faster than the other two countries. The Qianping Ridges Huang family, Demonic Caves Chang family, and Fanyi Mountains Wang family are all under sect masters' control. They can change their sects at any time. This humble one really admires them. Ha ha ha, Yin, when did you learn to flatter the sect master? Zhang Qixiao laughed out loud. These three families in the country of Lian were originally the secret hands of our demonic 13 sects. They were cultivated decades ago. If this sect master couldn't control them now, how could he dare to establish the demonic 13 sects? This humble one admires sect master for this. The disciple named Yin said respectfully. The demonic 13 sects were established by sect masters single-handedly. Moreover, it started decades ago. It's only now that you've revealed your ferocious side. If it were this humble one, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to hold back 20 years ago. Haha, do you think I didn't want to establish a sect earlier? Zhang Qixiao laughed and scolded. In the past, my strength wasn't enough. Now that I have the 13 deputy sect masters, I have the courage to speak. If it weren't for you, I would still be holding back. I wouldn't dare. We all relied on sect master's talent, Yin said hurriedly. If it weren't for sect master, how could we have today's status and achievements? How could we have a firm foothold in front of the Dao sect cultivators? Moreover, we have to rely on sect master to stand up to them in the future. We really can't do anything. Haha. Zhang Qixiao enjoyed it in her heart, and the corners of her mouth curled into a slight smile. Ever since this humble one entered the demonic 13 sects, I've treated the demonic 13 sects as my home. It's a place where this humble one can shelter from the wind and rain in the future. Yin still didn't dare to look up as he said humbly. Moreover, sect master's great talent and bold vision has left this humble one in awe. To be honest, this humble one has considered the future development of the demonic 13 sects. But this humble one really didn't expect that sect master would establish a sect in the 3 cultivation countries at once. This way, our demonic 13 sects will become a colossus. This humble one's thoughts are really insignificant compared to sect masters. Haha, I'm afraid you don't understand, right? Zhang Qixiao said with a smile. Sect master is really godly. Yin raised his head at this moment. His fair and clear face revealed a shrewd look, and his eyes flashed with admiration. No one would associate him with a demonic cultivator. This humble one has never dared to ask, afraid that it would disturb sect master's train of thought. Now that everything is ready, please enlighten me, sect master. We were talking about forbearance just now. Yin, you're really forbearing. Speak, you're the 2nd deputy sect master of the demonic 13 sects. This sect has nothing to hide from you. Zhang Qixiao said with a nod. Actually, there's nothing too suspicious. This humble one just feels that although our demonic 13 sects have a lot of people, the cultivation of our disciples is still shallow and can't be compared to those cultivation sects. Even if we establish a sect, it's best to find a slightly remote place that's easy to defend and hard to attack. We don't even want to be discovered by them. Yin smiled apologetically. Moreover, sect master has established 3 bases in each of the 3 cultivation countries at once. Isn't this just dividing the power of our demonic 13 sects? Each base will only have 30% of our power. Moreover, the development of the 3 demonic 13 sects will definitely be different. Which demonic 13 sect is the real demonic 13 sect? Ha ha ha, Zhang Qixiao laughed. He knew in his heart that Yin might not be ignorant. However, he still asked this question. On one hand, it was to express his respect for him, which showed that he was really humble. On the other hand, it was also to express his unswerving loyalty to the demonic 13 sect and his concern for its development. In the face of Zhang Qixiao's laughter, Yi Yin's expression was normal, as if he was really asking for advice. Yi Yin, didn't you say so yourself? The cultivation of our demonic 13 sects disciples is generally shallow, and the newly recruited disciples are all useless. It's not suitable for us to go against the cultivation sects directly. In that case, 100,000 people and 30,000 people are all the same in the eyes of the cultivation sects. Since that's the case, why don't we divide the 100,000 people into 3 groups? We can directly divert the attention of the Tao sect's cultivators. Moreover, in this way, our demonic 13 sect, which originally had 1 base, will now have 3 bases. Won't our reputation be even greater? Moreover, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Our demonic 13 sect has 3 bases all of a sudden. How would they know which one is the real demonic 13 sect? Although the 3 cultivation countries are all Tao sects, they are not one country or sect. If they want to deal with our demonic 13 sect, they will definitely have to join forces. There will also be dirty tricks involved. Isn't this a good thing for our demonic 13 sect? -9. Chapter 2577. Yi nodded hurriedly. Yes, yes. They thought that Lord Sect Master set up a maze, but who would know that these 3 places are the true foundations of our heavenly demon sect? As for the development between the 3 foundations that you mentioned, there's even less to worry about. Zhang Qingxiao continued. Fiendish cultivators like us emphasize on bloodshed. Whoever develops better, our sect will invest more in that person. The 13 sects of Heavenly Demon Sect. Perhaps in the end, there's only one sect that can stand tall in the Dawn Rain continent. Or perhaps it can develop into 30 sects. All these will depend on you, Yi Yin. Yes, I understand. I'll definitely sacrifice my life for the development of our Heavenly Demon Sect. Yi Yin bowed in admiration. Yi Yin, remember, Heavenly Demon Sect is our Heavenly Demon Sect. Your development is the development of our Heavenly Demon Sect, and your improvement is the improvement of our Heavenly Demon Sect. Your Heavenly Brahman Sect is also a part of my Heavenly Demon Sect. Supporting the Heavenly Brahman Sect is the greatest support for my sect. If your Tiafan sect develops well in the future, you can even establish your own sect and be the master of your own sect. Zhang Qishao said earnestly. Yi Yin's eyes flashed with a trace of fanaticism when he heard that, but he concealed it immediately and knelt on the ground. I only need to follow Lord Sect Master's footsteps. I don't dare to think too much. Ha, up to you. Whatever you think, our sect will support it. Zhang Qishao nodded and took out a storage bag. She handed it to Yi Yin and said, This is the reward from Tiangang sect. You can deal with it as you see fit. Thank you, Lord Sect Master. Yi Yin took the storage bag, scanned it with his divine telekinesis, and immediately bowed in joy. After Yi Yin left, Zhang Qishao couldn't wait to reach out and pick up the fiendish bamboo slip again. She pointed her finger, and a blood-colored mist shot into the fiendish bamboo slip. The blood-colored brilliance on the fiendish bamboo slip flickered like a ball of blood. It was only after a while that the fiendish bamboo slip was slightly white. Ah? What's going on? Zhang Qishao immersed his divine sense into the magic bamboo slip that had its restriction lifted. He couldn't help but be shocked. That Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra was given to junior sister by Xiaohua. I have also carefully looked at it. It is a Buddhist sex cultivation method. There is nothing strange about it. That's why I was relieved to have someone send it over. How could this Jianlu lose consciousness after cultivating? Motherfucker, I'm in a terrible fix. Zhang Qishao slapped his forehead and was about to get up in annoyance. However, after he put away the jade table, he smiled bitterly. When it comes to junior sister, my heart is in a mess. I'm a devil cultivator, not a Buddhist. What's the use of me going there? The one who tied the bell should untie it. If they wanted to find Jianluer's illness, Xiaohua had to go. But this guy was in the sword tomb. If I don't go, who can find him? Forget it, I'll tell junior martial sister first. Anyway, it's useless for me to go. Zhang Qishao was also helpless. He wrote something in the magic bamboo slip, and then pointed his hand. The blood-red mist appeared again. When it's time to ask Xiaohua for help, we'll go together. When the mist on the message talisman disappeared, Zhang Qishao put away the bright scenic bell. His body was suffused with a faint brilliance, blocking the yellow soil outside his body. His figure flashed slightly and disappeared. That figure was like an antelope hanging its horn without a trace. It was many times more brilliant than Yin Meng. Zhang Qishao was thinking about going to the Sword Tomb to find Xiaohua. However, even if he really went to the Sword Tomb, it might not be easy to find Xiaohua at this time. Because Xiaohua had already gone deep into the Sword Tomb following the instructions of the magic bamboo slip. At the periphery of the Sword Tomb, there was an endless stretch of purple jasmine flowers. Even for a male cultivator like Xiaohua, when he looked at it, his eyes were filled with gorgeous purple. He couldn't help but be intoxicated. Not to mention women like formless Sword Guyu, they also saw the purple that spread between heaven and earth as the most beautiful scene in the Sword Tomb. However, the Sword Tomb, which was known as one of the 10 most dangerous places in the country of Xi, had shed its gorgeous outer layer and revealed its sinister side in front of Xiaohua. As Xiaohua went deeper, the purple jasmine flowers gradually became sparse. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of blood-red vegetation. This vegetation had already existed when the purple jasmine flowers were still flourishing. However, it was stuck to the ground and was covered by the purple. Now that the pure purple had become thinner, this blood-red color was revealed. Moreover, the weather inside the Sword Tomb was different from the outside. Gradually, the dark clouds above Xiaohua's head became thicker, and the wind became more bitingly cold. If the winter's cold wind was said to be as cold as a knife to the people of the secular world, then the cold wind inside the Sword Tomb was really like a knife. Not to mention the bone-piercing cold, the wind blades that often rolled up in the wind also slightly stirred up the light protecting Xiaohua's body. Sometimes, the light even faintly flickered, forcing Xiaohua to constantly urge his magic power. The strangest thing was, from time to time, a few bean-sized raindrops would also drip down. Under this kind of cold weather, these raindrops didn't condense. Instead, each raindrop contained an extremely strong force and was even somewhat sharp. Every time it hit Xiaohua's body, it was like a small flying sword attacking him. Damn it, that Yutong is really determined to kill me! The more Xiaohua flew in, the more alarmed he became. This strange phenomenon in the Sword Tomb must be caused by the remnant sword intent. Those hundreds of thousands, millions of battle spirits would also add fuel to the fire. Under this kind of extreme situation, this young master was only an early foundation establishment cultivator at that time. How could he resist? I'm afraid that before I reached this place, I would have already been buried under the purple jasmine flowers. But Yutong, he was only a 10th layer Qi refining brat at that time. Why did he come here? Or what is the Huanhua sect doing here? Xiaohua muttered again. Didn't Zhong Haoren say it? These 2 years, we met many cultivation families, but we didn't see many Huanhua sect disciples. Then why did Yun Guichong and the others suddenly come here? Didn't they participate in the war? Huanhua sect, a Huanhua sect. This young master sincerely wanted to enter the Huanhua sect that day, but not only was this Yutong's senior meddling, he was also threatened in the main hall. Since this young master came here today, I want to see what kind of tricks you were playing that day. Xiaohua originally resented Yutong's insidiousness, but when he thought about how dangerous this place was, and how Yutong was only 100% Qi refining cultivator at that time, and now he was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. He might not even be able to reach the middle stage of foundation establishment. Back then, he needed someone to protect him when he went to this Sword Tomb, so he definitely wouldn't go deep into this place. Thus, his thoughts of looking for Yutong faded. Hua, a huge sound of water splashing could be heard in the air. The raindrops that were just drizzling a moment ago suddenly became bigger, sprinkling down like a torrential downpour. The protective brilliance around Xiaohua's body flickered. Huh! It's a bit strange. Xiaohua hurriedly urged his magic power to maintain the protective brilliance. While he raised his head to look at the already pitch-black night sky, he couldn't see the slightest bit of starlight. He thought very strangely. This sword tomb's rainstorm, doesn't it have thunder? It seems that ever since this young master entered the sword tomb, I haven't heard the sound of thunder. Thinking this, Xiaohua pricked up his ears. Sure enough, his ears were filled with the sound of raindrops falling. There wasn't the slightest bit of sonorous thunder. Hee, the world is so big that nothing is too strange. Xiaohua laughed inwardly. Today, my horizons have been broadened again. After flying for a while, the entire sword tomb was pitch black. The rainwater that was like the Milky Way hanging upside down was like the flying sword of a swordsman, attacking Xiaohua from top to bottom all the time. Xiaohua gradually felt impatient. As a result, Xiaohua took out the jade slip again. His divine sense was just about to enter it to check when suddenly, Xiaohua felt that within a few dozen feet to his left, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly transformed, and a burst of intense sword chi was born from all around. Who? Xiaohua coldly shouted, his Buddhist sense sweeping over, but he saw that the surroundings were empty. There wasn't any swordsman's figure. Moreover, at this time, the space near Xiaohua's left had a faint feeling of sharpness and gravity. His Buddhist sense was unconsciously obstructed, and was firmly suppressed by that gravity, unable to go very far. Seeing that his Buddhist sense was suppressed, Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. His figure suddenly stopped in midair, his eyes vigilantly sweeping all around. One wank! A burst of sword cries rose from the distance, like a swarm of bees, becoming increasingly louder. Not good! It's a remnant sword array! Xiaohua felt a swift and fierce sword intent approaching, and a layer of goosebumps unconsciously appeared on his arms. A kind of vigilance also appeared in his heart, and he immediately understood. As a result, his figure hastily flashed to the side. Xiaohua's ethereal steps was already very mysterious, and at this time, with the addition of the wind evasion, his entire body was like a wisp of smoke, floating without a trace of smoke. In the blink of an eye, he had moved more than one zhang. The instant he dodged, 5 sword lights simultaneously rushed out from a pentagonal area around Xiaohua. Those sword lights were of different colors, and they flew straight into the air, stabbing towards the place where Xiaohua was previously standing. Moreover, those sword lights trembled slightly, and along with this strange trembling fluctuation, those sword lights rapidly expanded. By the time they stabbed in front of Xiaohua, it had already become a 5-colored sword screen, flatly covering an area of more than 10 zhang. Although Xiaohua had dodged more than 1 zhang, that place was still where the sword lights were attacking. What kind of sword array is this? Xiaohua's heart trembled, and without hesitation, he waved his hand and took out the wishful steel staff. He waved it casually, protecting his body without a drop of water leaking out. Kung kung kung! Like raindrops hitting a boulder, the sound was unceasing. The sword lights were all blocked by the wishful steel staff. Every time the sword light fell on the wishful steel staff, the weight in Xiaohua's hand increased by a little. Not long after, the weight of the wishful steel staff was quite considerable. Isn't the wishful steel staff not known to be in the 5 elements? Xiaohua was a little depressed. How come the influence of the sword array is reduced in this sword array? It seems that the demonic tool is not in the 5 elements. When the wishful steel staff was added to the demonic tool during the refining process, although the weight increased, it was contaminated with the 5 elements. The gains did not make up for the losses. -9. Chapter 2578. However, just as Xiaohua was thinking about how to break this sword formation, the 5-colored sword curtain was suddenly cut off. The entire night sky was only left with the sound of dripping rain. The buzzing sound of the sword had completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared at all. Xiaohua let out a long sigh. He held the wishful staff in his hand and stood hesitantly in the air. The sword formation had appeared and disappeared suddenly. Moreover, the power of the sword formation was very fierce. It seemed to be more mysterious than the 7-star sword formation that he could set up. If this sword formation had not suddenly disappeared, he was afraid that he would have to spend more effort to break it. Since he had just entered the center of the sword tomb and encountered such a powerful sword formation, then there were probably more broken sword formations inside. The sword formations must be even more powerful. Was it necessary for him to continue moving forward? At this moment, the distant sword tomb stretched out. Suddenly, a strong silver-white brilliance flashed. It was very obvious in this pitch-black darkness. This silver brilliance was like a flying dragon, but also like a fierce tiger. It circled in the distance and rushed into the sky. It rapidly fell down, and when the distance disappeared into the night, a roaring sound like a dragon and a leaping tiger passed into Xiao Hua's ears. This hissing sound was like a stone that had been thrown into the lake. With a splash, the stone disappeared, but the ripples on the surface of the lake continued to ripple. They slowly rippled across the entire surface of the lake, and didn't calm down for a long time. The hissing sound quickly disappeared. However, following that, "Wang! Sorrowful sword cries were attracted by the hissing sound. One after another, they appeared in the distance, and rushed towards the surroundings of the sword tomb as if they were spreading. The area where Xiao Hua was at was naturally affected as well. Low and high sword cries rose and fell one after another. Even the area where the sword formation was located at the 5 stars also let out a dull hiss at the same time. Rumble! Within the Buddhist flames, Punisher Dream and Mountain Splitter were actually attracted by the sword hum as well. Within the Buddhist flames, they were itching to give it a try. Even the 7 sword orbs that hadn't been nurtured before seemed to be jumping about. Xiao Hua's primordial spirit, which was in the Dream Executioner's primordial spirit, suddenly jumped. Sorrow, longing, competitiveness, and unyielding emotions filled his primordial spirit. He even had the impulse to charge into the sword cry. Xiao Hua's heart stirred. His flying sword had been nurtured for a long time, but it hadn't produced sword intent for a long time. Now that his primordial spirit had such a perception, wasn't it the best opportunity? Almost without thinking, Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and Dream Executioner and Mountain Splitter flew out. Wang! 2 lively sword cries rushed into the night sky, echoing with the other sword cries. At the same time, a feeling of carefreeness, freedom, and responsibility filled Xiao Hua's heart. Ha! Xiao Hua immediately tossed that trace of hesitation to the back of his mind. The Tao of the flying sword is precisely about moving forward courageously, becoming stronger when faced with danger. If one is overcautious and hesitant, how can one become a supreme flying sword? This young master has known about this path for a long time. However, whenever I encounter danger, I feel a bit fearful. I have to think about how to avoid it. How can I become a flying sword? Forget it, no matter how powerful this sword tomb is, this young master still has to take a look. Otherwise, how can I face Senior Li Xiaobai? Wang, Xiao Hua's heroic spirit soared to the sky. The 2 flying swords were also happy. As the flying swords vibrated, the sword cry was also loud and clear. Unexpectedly, it provoked the nearby countless flying swords to cry out. Ah! Xiao Hua was rather stunned. He originally thought that since he had just touched the central edge of the sword tomb, there wouldn't be many broken flying swords. However, he didn't expect that. He had already been trapped in countless flying swords. When he thought of the countless flying swords inside the sword tomb, Xiao Hua's astonishment completely disappeared. He was even somewhat secretly delighted. It must be known that these flying swords were the remnants of tens of thousands of years old. Xiao Hua absolutely wouldn't believe that they hadn't turned into swords. However, just as Xiao Hua's greed was born, this greed was dispelled by the indescribable reverence from the flying swords. The 2 flying swords hovered in the air above the sword catacomb as if they had returned to a different home. The countless sword wills nearby were the companions and seniors of the flying swords. These flying swords were broken here and laid to rest here. This was the place where they had fought bravely in the past. Just like the countless brave swordsmen and cultivators, no matter what they had fought for, they had fulfilled their duties and done what they should have done. Their corpses were laid to rest here. This place should be respected by all living beings, not destroyed and harassed. Great! Understanding this, Xiaohua's mind was immediately filled with compassion. He had long since abandoned the idea of taking the broken swords out of the ground. His slightly opened left hand also quietly closed. Xiaohua even slightly bowed, as if he was saluting the countless flying swords, revering their solemn and stirring moments before they were broken. The sword tomb has always existed. These flying swords have never been taken away by sword cultivators. Perhaps this is the meaning. This is the mausoleum of the broken swords. The best thing to do is to not disturb them and let them rest peacefully. Xiaohua suddenly understood the meaning of the sword tomb. Inside the flying swords, his entire primordial spirit was surrounded by a warm feeling. It was as if only at this moment did the primordial spirit he planted inside the flying swords was recognized by the flying swords. A layer of hazy yet clear veil blocked in front of his primordial spirit. It was as if as long as he could see what was behind the veil, the sword intent that Xiaohua longed for would be born. Unfortunately, it was as if he was missing an opportunity. This veil still existed. Let's go. Xiaohua smiled and looked into the distance. The sound of the swords was still gradually fading. Perhaps the answer is there. With two whooshes, the Dream Executor and Mountain Splitter landed at Xiaohua's feet. Xiaohua didn't use any other flying techniques. He urged the flying swords to fly. In the dark night, the two red and green flying swords weren't very conspicuous. However, they flew towards the center of the sword tomb with a clear heart that pursued the path of the sword. However, in the time it took for Xiaohua to smoke half a cigarette, he heard a light tearing sound, as if silk had been torn apart. The raindrops that had been splashing around Xiaohua suddenly decreased in size, and when Xiaohua's body became sluggish, the raindrops actually disappeared without a trace. This is bad. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. I just encountered a broken sword array. Now, I'm afraid it's a Dao sect array? Sure enough, just as Xiaohua's figure flashed and retreated backwards, kacha kacha, sound rang out from several li to the left of Xiaohua. In midair, an earth-shattering restrictive force was suddenly born. It was as if a palm that was several li in size had suddenly curled up. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, the seal of turning the sea flew out. An earth-yellow brilliance enveloped Xiaohua. Only then was the restrictive force barely lifted. This restrictive force seems to be comparable to a talisman from a nascent soul's hand. Xiaohua pondered in midair. Moreover, the restrictive force of a nascent soul's hand condenses from all directions towards the center. This array is completely born in the entire space. It's as if there's a tiny nascent soul's hand in every inch of space. I don't know how many years this array has been here. Even now, it's still so powerful. An ordinary bright swordsman definitely wouldn't be able to easily escape from this array. Such a powerful array. If only I had an array diagram. Xiaohua thought this array was the same as the sword array from before. He thought he could escape after waiting a little longer. However, as the array's strength increased, the brilliance of the seal of turning the sea also gradually dimmed. The array didn't seem to have any signs of stopping. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed. He urged his magic and pointed at the seal of turning the sea. Rise! The seal of turning the sea let out a huge rumbling sound. It seemed to be rapidly expanding. However, as Xiaohua poured his magic power in, the surroundings of the seal of turning the sea didn't swirl up a hurricane. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth that Xiaohua expected also didn't suck in. Even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has actually been confined. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Helpless, he could only urge his magic power again. The true essence in his body surged, but the coiling dragon above the seal of turning the sea gradually came alive again. Roar! The coiling dragon circled around the seal, opened its mouth, and held the seal in its mouth. Then, like a flying dragon in the sky, the coiling dragon soared high into the sky. The seal also emitted an extremely powerful restrictive force and rushed towards the array. Rumble, an earth-shaking rumble rang out. The seal of ocean overturning seal collided with the sealing power of the formation, causing the space several kilometers in front of Xiaohua to tremble. Xiaohua's figure also swayed twice amidst the tremors. The enormous force pressed him down by more than 10 feet. Roar! The coiling dragon of the seal of turning the sea let out a mournful cry. As Xiaohua's magic power was slightly exhausted, the dragon's body flashed and was about to land on the seal of turning the sea. Rise! Although Xiaohua was shocked that the array covered such a large area, he was even more delighted by the might of his seal of turning the sea. He roared again and urged his magic power. The coiling dragon once again charged towards the array, full of vigor. Buzz! A loud sound was heard. The brilliance of the seal of turning the sea slightly paused in midair. It was like a jade pillar holding up the sky that was collapsing. This young master wants to see, even without the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, whether or not the true essence in this young master's meridians can break through this so-called array. Xiaohua coldly snorted. The trace of primordial spirit in his meridians urged the dragonization art. Boundless true essence surged, and his magic power instantly rushed into the seal of turning the sea. 1. The seal of ocean overturning seal suddenly expanded, and threads of jade began to condense in the surroundings. As the seal of ocean overturning seal flashed, the coiling dragon also gradually grew longer. Then, the entire seal of ocean overturning seal seemed to be supported by a giant. It was both slow and indestructible as it charged into the array. Bang! The clear sound of water rang out. The array was broken by the seal of turning the sea. All of the restrictive force suddenly disappeared, and the rainwater once again poured down from above. Damn it, this is too anticlimactic. Xiaohua was obviously caught unprepared. The seal of turning the sea whistled and soared into the sky. The earthen yellow brilliance illuminated an area of several tens of zhang. Within this abandoned array, the ground was also covered in scarlet-red vegetation. Now that it was washed by the rain, the brilliance was transparent. However, that scarlet-red color was demonic. -9. Chapter 2579. Xiaohua put away the seal of overturning the sea and flew for more than 10 li. Within the range of the array, there were no more changes. I'm afraid I can't rashly move forward anymore. Although Xiaohua's heroic spirit soared to the sky, in the face of the sword cultivators and the array set up by the Taoist sect for tens of thousands of years, he was also anxious in his heart. Let's wait until dawn tomorrow. The rain will stop, then we'll move forward. Thinking of this, Xiaohua looked around and scanned the area with his divine sense. He was about to descend and rest in a low-lying area. However, just as he was about to descend, his left arm suddenly shook. The light protecting his body was hit by a sharp force and instantly collapsed. Even his Taoist robe was torn apart. This is... Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly checked, but he didn't see anything special in the darkness. When Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense, he felt a 1-foot-long, scimitar-like existence emitting a strange fluctuation. Space crack! Xiaohua suddenly realized that he had already seen this kind of extremely powerful thing in the netherworld. He didn't expect to encounter it again just as he arrived at the center of the sword tomb. Xiaohua hurriedly opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. Sure enough, a gray brilliance stopped at his left arm. It was thin, like a strand of hair. This sword tomb is too dangerous. Xiaohua couldn't help but groan again. He looked again and again with his Dharma eye before his figure landed. He clapped his hand and took out the rabbit talismans. He separately placed them on the snowfield. When Xiaohua grabbed with his hand and was about to activate the rabbit array, the jade slip in his arms suddenly vibrated and seemed to start to heat up. Huh! Xiaohua was surprised. He stretched out his hand and took out the jade slip. He used a bit of magic power to activate it. The jade slip actually flew out a few feet and flew towards the north of the array 1,000 feet away. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly grabbed with his hand and took out the talismans that were placed on the snowfield. His figure shot forward and followed the jade slip. He saw the jade slip fly to a place a few feet higher than the snowfield. There was also a quan-shaped stone block there. However, these rocks were already damaged, and they were covered with scarlet plants. When Xiaohua saw this, he did not hesitate to grab the rock. A layer of silver light appeared on the rock. This silver light was like mercury leaking to the ground, quickly falling from the top of the rock. A palm-sized square cauldron was revealed. However, the cauldron that was revealed this time was not in perfect condition. There were many flaws on its surface. Xiaohua looked at it for a moment, then pointed with his finger. The jade slip once again fell into the small cauldron. With a loud bang, the jade slip transformed into a silver splash within the small cauldron. The splash seemed to have been sprayed into the air, then it transformed into a meteor that flew towards the extreme north. This meteor was extremely fast, seemingly even faster than an ordinary message talisman. While Xiaohua was stunned, the meteor had already crossed over 1,000 feet. Just as Xiaohua was about to urge his imperial thunder travel to chase after the shooting star, he stopped the rumbling of thunder. This jade slip is most likely a messaging talisman. Of course, this young master can catch up, but can an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator catch up? In the end, what kind of medicinal pill is Yutong selling in his gourd? Could it be he has no intention of harming this young master? Just a mere message talisman? But why wasn't it a message talisman just now, but 2 formations instead? Xiaohua was somewhat unable to understand, but he was not anxious. Since the message talisman had already been sent out, it would be best if someone came. Even if no one came, he would continue to move forward. However, Xiaohua thought for a moment, and his figure slowly changed. It was the image of the so-called Feng Ying from that day. It had already been more than 10 years. Fortunately, Xiaohua's muddle-headed memories could actually still change. Moreover, Xiaohua's own cultivation had also been suppressed to the early stage of foundation establishment. The Taoist robe on Xiaohua's body naturally changed into an ordinary one. Then, he took out an ordinary disc-shaped magic tool. The misty green brilliance merely blocked Xiaohua's body. This was not out of Xiaohua's expectations. After several hours, he saw that the east was already shining, and no one was coming to look for him. Seeing that the pouring rain did not have the slightest sign of stopping, Xiaohua, who was quietly cultivating, opened his eyes. He pointed his finger, and the bronze plate fell into his hand. Xiaohua was about to transform again. At this moment, the quan-shaped stone in front of him suddenly emitted a faint silver light. Oh! Xiaohua hastily stood still. He flew slightly away from the stone and coldly looked at it. The silver light once again covered the entire stone. However, this time, the stone had transformed into an oval shape, and a broken mirror was revealed from the oval. What a brilliant message talisman technique! Seeing this, Xiaohua immediately thought, if this technique was used in a battle between Dao cultivators, why would the disciple on duty personally send the message? Even a lot of battle reports would be lost because of this. Emotions gradually appeared on the broken mirror. An old man whose face could not be seen clearly revealed his astonished face. When he saw Xiaohua, he immediately scolded. How many times did this old man say it? Wu Jiazigui was no longer in use before the new year. Why are you still running there? Xiaohua's eyes turned. He hastily bowed and said, All right, teacher brother knows that this disciple did not receive the notice. This disciple only followed the jade slip that junior brother you gave me and headed to this place. Humph, the old man coldly snorted. Whether or not you received the notice has nothing to do with this old man. You go and find your junior brother you to settle the score. The route of Wu Jia Zige is now covered with broken sword formations and spell formations. There are also many spatial cracks. Do you want this old man to send someone to pick you up? If you want to die, don't drag this old man down. Oh? It's now covered? Xiaohua understood. He was shocked. Could it be that the broken sword formations and spell formations can also change? Senior brother! Xiaohua hastily shouted. This disciple came here with great difficulty. How do you want this disciple to return? Just now, this disciple was lucky to escape from the sword formation. If not for these raindrops, this disciple would have already died in the sword formation. Where's your junior brother Yu? Which one is he? Why didn't he bring you here? The old man coldly asked. He did not answer Xiaohua's question. Junior brother Yu. Naturally it's junior brother Yu Tong. Xiaohua blinked his eyes and said probingly. He has some matters to attend to and let this disciple go first. I'm afraid that he will come later. This disciple. Could it be that this disciple came too late? At this moment, the silver mirror faintly flickered. The brilliance was somewhat dim. Oh, Yu Dong! When the old man heard this, he seemed to be deep in thought. Soon after, he smiled and said, Not late, not late. It's never late. You. Immediately after, on the mirror, the old man's figure flickered extremely. His voice was also unclear. Senior brother. Xiaohua was somewhat anxious. Just as he was about to shout, the old man appeared again. This old man will pass. It was these 3 words that caused the mirror to vanish. However, the silver oval was still visible, but the silver light was also gradually fading away. What does this old man want to pass on? Xiaohua waited until the so-called Wu Jia Zige had been abolished. When the silver light faded away, this place would no longer have anything special. He wanted to find Yutong to vent his anger. Even the idea of finding trouble with Huan Hua Pai would also fall through. That's right, Yudong. This old man seemed to have mistaken Yutong for Yudong, and he hesitated for a moment. Could it be that there are many people with the surname Yu in the Huan Hua sect? Is Yudong Yutong's senior brother? Moreover, the sword formations and formations within the sword catacomb can actually change. This is even more unexpected. If it weren't for the old man from the Huan Hua sect, I would still be courting death with this useless jade slip in the sword catacomb. But then again, what is the Huan Hua sect doing in the sword tomb? Xiaohua's eyes turned slightly as he quickly thought about what he had just seen. Clearly, the Huan Hua sect has some tricks up their sleeves in this sword tomb. Moreover, this arrangement had already started long before the sword Dao battle. This has nothing to do with the sword Dao battle. Fairy Hong Xia is already a disciple in the late stage of foundation establishment, and seems to be very favored by the sect leader of the Huan Hua sect. This young master has never heard her talk about the arrangement of the Huan Hua sect in the sword tomb. This place must be very secretive. If this young master discovered this secret, would he offend the sect leader of the Huan Hua sect? Then, this young master and Fairy Hong Xia's dual cultivation will be a problem? Hee, what are you thinking? This young master is now Feng Ying. Could it be that the Huan Hua sect leader is also in the sword tomb? Xiaohua immediately laughed sinisterly. That guy Yun Jiaying is also here. This young master will go and take a look first. As Xiaohua thought about it, the oval slowly shrank, and the silver color was about to completely disappear. Presumably, when the silver color disappeared, the oval would turn back into an ordinary stone. At this moment, like the jade slip that Xiaohua sent out, another silver light flashed like a meteor and disappeared into the oval. It was the same jade slip that Xiaohua sent out earlier. It seems that even the heavens want me to go. Xiaohua reached out with a smile and took out the jade slip. He immersed his divine sense into it, and indeed, it recorded the location of the other's Yigui. Xiaohua flew up and looked at it carefully. After identifying the direction, he opened his left hand and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. His figure slowly flew, and according to the guidance of the jade slip, he flew towards the northwest direction. After Xiaohua flew away, the silver color of the first Jia Zigui completely disappeared, and it returned to its previous stone shape. At this time, the stones seemed to have been eroded over the years. Not only were there many small holes on the surface like a honeycomb, after being washed by the rain, the stone gradually turned into powder. It seemed that the inside was also decayed. As the rain flowed, the clear water covered the ground of the sword tomb. All the dust seeped into the ground and gradually disappeared. Not to mention Xiaohua coming here again, even if the jade slip that he spoke of came again, there would not be any trace of it. Rumble. With a series of loud noises, Xiaohua used the seal of ocean overturning seal to shatter the numerous sword intents that were as powerful as mountains and rivers. His figure was like a flood dragon as he soared through the sky. Damn it, this is too powerful. Xiaohua's figure had just left the sword formation when he cried out in astonishment. -9. Chapter 2580. Yes, although Xiaohua is only at the late stage of foundation establishment, his strength is comparable to the late stage of gold core. Even with his strength, he suffered so much in the sword tomb. What about others? If they haven't reached the nascent soul realm and don't have the strength to transform into a sword, I'm afraid they can't come and go freely, right? No wonder those gold core cultivators in the conference hall didn't have any ideas about the sword tomb. This is indeed not a place for people to stay. Presumably, sword cultivators won't do anything here. Xiaohua pointed at the seal of ocean overturning, and a faint earthen yellow radiance protected him. Then, he took out the jade slip and carefully looked at it. After that, he scratched his head and flew up with slight hesitation. However, it wasn't long before a few more rays of sword light suddenly appeared. No, this young master went the wrong way again. Xiaohua saw the familiar sword array and immediately realized. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, wanting to escape. However, it was already too late. The sword lights had already enveloped his body. After searching for more than an hour, Xiaohua finally arrived in front of another pile of stones that formed the word, complete. Xiaohua sighed and looked around. I don't know when this young master's road-finding ability will improve. Clearly, this young master can find a path, but this young master has to take a detour. But it feels like flying straight like this is fine, but the actual route is a detour. Forget it, this young master is afraid of this kind of fate. Being able to find this place is already not bad. Immediately, Xiaohua activated the zigui and threw the jade slip into it. The silver light on the zigui flashed, but the jade slip didn't fly away. It only quietly floated in the small cauldron. It seemed that only with this jade slip here could the zigui's silver light spread out like a wave. After the time it takes to finish a meal, a figure appeared in midair in the northwest. It was impossible to see who it was, but when Xiaohua got closer, he couldn't help but chuckle. This was a mid-foundation establishment cultivator. His hair was grizzled, his face was thin, and his chin was sharp. A few strands of sparse but long beard floated above his chin. The cultivator's eyes were sharp, and he seemed to be on high alert. He looked Xiaohua up and down from a distance, and even looked him over. Xiaohua laughed inwardly, but as soon as he saw who it was, he immediately retracted his Buddhist sense. He absolutely couldn't let this person discover anything unusual. You are... That mesmerized cultivator sized up Xiaohua from head to toe in a somewhat strange manner. Disciple Feng Ying greets, senior brother. Xiaohua also pretended to hesitate and bowed. Senior brother? That cultivator was a little strange. His body slightly floated back and he asked curiously. You? Which family's disciple are you? Which sect? Xiaohua was just as stunned as that cultivator. This disciple is naturally a disciple of the Huanhua sect. Could it be... Senior brother isn't? That cultivator muttered to himself for a moment, then grabbed the jade slip from the zigui with his hand. He immersed his divine sense into it, and asked in a low voice. Who told you to come here? Is this your jade slip? Seeing the cultivator ask so many questions, Xiaohua's heart thumped. His eyes turned slightly, and he said with a smile. This disciple was told to come here by senior brother Yudong. This jade slip wasn't given to this disciple by senior brother Yudong. That jade slip was just taken away by a senior brother at Wu Jiazige. Oh, so it was a disciple recommended by Yudong. Although that cultivator's voice was somewhat distorted through the mesmerizing robe, the relief in his voice was clear. It's no wonder you went to Wu Jiazige. That place was already abandoned before the end of the year. If you had arrived a few days later, even if you had the jade slip in your hand, you wouldn't have been able to find this place. However, you actually being able to come here from Wu Jiazige greatly exceeded this old man's expectations. Yes, this disciple heard what that senior brother said earlier, and I've been pondering in my heart. However, senior brother, this disciple flew here just like that. Although I encountered some sword formations, they were all broken. Although this disciple was scared out of his wits, they weren't really able to injure this disciple. Is there something wrong? Xiaohua took the initiative to strike first, and hurriedly asked, Do you want to examine this disciple's command token? Since it was recommended by Yudong, then it's no big deal. The cultivator smiled, then tossed the jade slip to Xiaohua and said, There's no need to examine it. This jade slip is even more useful than a command token. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiaohua's hand that was pretending to reach into his bosom stopped, and he took the jade slip with a flip of his hand. He nodded and said, It seems that senior brother Yudong also said the same thing at that time. The rinsing flower sex command token can only verify one's identity. Can it also raise your realm? The cultivator sneered. You were able to obtain this minor stone command token. That's your luck in this lifetime. Minor stone command token? Xiaohua was somewhat dumbfounded, and he thought to himself, Isn't this just a summoning talisman? When did it become a minor stone command token? Minor stone, is it these stones? While thinking, Xiaohua's gaze swept over the pile of stones. At this time, the pile of stones no longer had the silver brilliance, and they were still the same stones as before. That cultivator clearly saw Xiaohua's gaze, and seemed to see through Xiaohua's thoughts. He pointed with his hand and said, Look at these stones, they're just stubborn stones, but in my hands I can minor stone command token them into gold. You can be considered lucky to actually be acquainted with Yudong. In the future you'll be a golden stone. When your cultivation is successful, you'll have to thank Yudong. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiaohua's heart moved, and he bowed and said, This disciple will definitely remember senior brother Yu's kindness in my heart. All right, follow this old man. The cultivator spoke for a long time, but he didn't mention his own name, nor did he say whether or not he was a disciple of the Huanhua sect. With a wave of his hand, he took the lead and flew towards the place where he came from. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent, and he also roused his spirit. Using the speed of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, he slowly chased after that cultivator. Sure enough, after flying for a while with the cultivator, Xiaohua understood why the cultivator didn't encounter sword formations and magic formations, and why he frequently encountered them. That cultivator's flight path wasn't a straight line at all. Sometimes it was curved, sometimes it was bent, and sometimes it was even slanted. It seemed that in this cultivator's eyes, this sword tomb was a maze, and he came and went very freely. At first, Xiaohua was still thinking about memorizing the route, but after flying for half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua gave up like before. It was because that cultivator's flight path was extremely irregular, and there wasn't anything nearby that could be used as a reference, so Xiaohua really didn't know how to memorize it. He flew straight for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, and during this time, he didn't encounter any magic formations or sword formations. He didn't even come across a single spatial crack, causing Xiaohua to be endlessly envious. When he thought about how he came here from Jiazige, he couldn't help but blush with shame in his heart. About 10 feet in front of him, there was another pile of stones, and it wasn't any different from before. If it was the same as before, Xiaohua would have definitely flown over, but this old man stopped in midair and didn't move forward. Xiaohua knew that something was wrong, so he cautiously followed behind him, quietly observing the situation. Sure enough, the old man clapped his hand and took out a silvery white triangular object. He slightly activated his magic power, and that object suddenly trembled and flew above the pile of stones. As the object trembled, a trembling, intermittent silver light flowed out from the pile of rocks and slowly, almost with some difficulty, submerged the entire pile of rocks. The moment the entire pile of rocks completely turned silver, the area around the pile of rocks in a radius of 10 feet, which was right in front of the old man, boiled like boiling water. The entire space was filled with silver bubbles. These bubbles contained a great amount of power, and the direction of each bubble was different. Xiaohua looked at this unforeseen event with some shock. He knew that if an ordinary cultivator suddenly barged in, just by relying on this strange change, the cultivator's body would be torn to shreds. The boiling water continued for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn before it slowly receded. Once the space became clear again, the old man once again pointed with his hand. The three rhombus-shaped object from before rose slightly. Following which, it transformed into a spear-like brilliance that pierced into a spot a few feet to the left of the rock. Puchi. Xiaohua clearly heard what seemed to be the sound of silk being torn apart. The space was pierced by the spear of light, and an unfathomably deep hole several feet in size appeared on the ground. Damn it, I have to become a spirit-seeking mouse again. Xiaohua sighed. He knew that the secret of the Huanhua sect was hidden under the ground of the Sword Tomb, so he couldn't help but complain. Of course, Xiaohua knew how to escape through the earth, so the secret of the Huanhua sect being hidden underground was extremely beneficial to him. However, when he thought about how every time he encountered a problem, he had to solve it underground, so Xiaohua felt a bit bored. Junior Marshal Brother Phone, please! The old man didn't move. He turned around and raised his hand, indicating for Xiaohua to enter the cave first. All right. Xiaohua knew that the old man was still worried about him, so he didn't hesitate and responded in a low voice. His figure flew to the entrance of the cave, and he released a bit of his Buddhist sense before flying into the cave. When Xiaohua's figure entered the cave, the old man looked left and right. His divine sense also swept the area twice before he felt relieved and landed inside the cave. Just as Xiaohua's figure landed inside the cave, a very strange suction force appeared from inside the cave. It was as if the suction force had grown a hand, and it pulled him into the depths of the cave. Xiaohua muttered to himself, but he didn't reject this force. His eyes were filled with silver light, as if this deep cave was formed by the silver brilliance. Xiaohua released his divine sense slightly, and within that silver brilliance, there was actually a sharp point, causing Xiaohua's divine sense to feel a slight pain. Without a doubt, this place is filled with gold attribute heaven and earth spirit chi. This deep cave is also formed by gold attribute heaven and earth spirit chi. Xiaohua thought to himself, and the magic power in his body slightly condensed to deal with any possible accidents. Sure enough, when Xiaohua landed about 10 zhang down, the pulling force actually increased, and the direction also changed, as if it wanted to clench a fist. Following that, the surrounding silver light became even more intense, and that kind of sharp cutting force penetrated through the brilliance, directly piercing into Xiaohua's skin. Naturally, Xiaohua's protective golden light was about to be activated. -9. Chapter 2581. Io, could it be that you're testing this young master's cultivation? Xiaohua slightly wrinkled his brows and forcefully restrained his magic power. While he was at it, he took out a yellow protective talisman that he hadn't used for a long time and placed it on his body with his magic power. As soon as the yellow talisman was activated, its brilliance flickered. It seemed that the brilliance in the passage was extremely powerful, and was constantly attacking the protective talisman. Junior Marshal Brother Phone, don't worry! The old man's voice floated over Xiaohua's head. This is the special feature of the restriction here. As long as you don't pay attention to it, it won't harm you. Yes, this disciple understands, Xiaohua respectfully said. This disciple only instinctively wants to protect himself. As he spoke, Xiaohua slapped his hand and the yellow protective talisman fell off. Without the yellow protective talisman's brilliance, the brilliance in the passage was still piercing. However, as the old man said, it didn't seem to be able to penetrate his skin. Just as Xiaohua was about to send a voice transmission to the old man, he heard a slight rumbling sound. The passage around one zhang to his left suddenly began to shake. The silver light that previously wrapped around Xiaohua also began to shrink. Before Xiaohua could show any surprise, bubbles that were 3 times bigger than Xiaohua's body appeared within the silver brilliance. Pop, pop, pop! These bubbles burst one after another. Xiaohua felt his entire body become light, as if he was floating in the air but also falling down. Everything in front of him became blurry, and the silver brilliance violently shook. The feeling of floating in the air only lasted for a few seconds before a heavy pressure fell on Xiaohua's shoulder. Teleport! Xiaohua was very familiar with this feeling. He immediately understood that there was actually a short-distance teleportation formation in this passage. The silver brilliance had just been replaced by a gray-white brilliance when Xiaohua felt his body become light again. His figure appeared in a small triangular room. Xiaohua slightly focused his eyes and looked around. He saw that this small room was only a few chi in size and could only accommodate 3 to 5 people. The surrounding walls were the same as the passage from before. They were all silver-white. However, this silver-white luster was floating on the walls and wasn't dazzling. And now, there were already 2 middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators standing in this small room. These 2 cultivators were both middle-aged, each holding a flying sword in their hands. The flying swords were overflowing with sword light, and at this moment, they were pressing against Xiaohua's ribs. "Who are you? Where is your stone tablet?" The 2 of them didn't wait for Xiaohua to come back to his senses as they asked coldly. "Disciple is Feng Ying, sent over by senior brother Yudong." Xiaohua's expression was slightly flustered as he hurriedly replied. "Your stone medallion!" The 2 of them didn't seem to slack off and continued to ask. In this disciple's embrace." Xiaohua cautiously pointed at his own chest and said in a low voice, "This disciple will give it to the 2 senior brothers." "Yes." A cold snort came from his nose, and the 2 flying swords moved forward a bit, fearing that Xiaohua would do something strange. When Xiaohua took out the jade slip, a cultivator took it and scanned it with his divine sense. His expression changed greatly as he berated. "This is senior martial brother Yu Bing's stone touch token. When did it become Yudong's? Who the hell are you?" When Xiaohua heard this, his brows furrowed. Previously, he used the jade slip from over 10 years ago to deceive the so-called Yu Bing, and then he used half-truths to deceive the confused old man just now. He originally thought that he had passed, but he didn't expect that after being transported to this place, he would be exposed by someone. Unconsciously, he became even more suspicious. "This inspection is so strict. What secret does this Huanhua sect have? This stone tablet gold really can increase the cultivation of Huanhua sect disciples." Thinking of this, Xiaohua bitterly smiled. "Disciple is naturally Feng Ying's. Disciple heard from junior martial brother Yudong that this place can increase disciples' cultivation, so disciple came here according to his jade slip. Just now, in the sword tomb, when junior martial brother Yudong sent out the jade slip, it didn't come back. This jade slip was... Senior martial brother Yu Bing sent it to disciple again. This situation, disciple already clearly explained it to a senior martial brother dressed in a confused robe. If the 2 senior martial brothers don't believe me, feel free to ask that senior martial brother." Xiaohua actually had Feng Yi's keepsake in his space, but that was also Feng Yi's, not Feng Ying's. Seeing the 2 cultivators so strict, Xiaohua didn't dare to rashly take it out. Hearing Xiaohua's reply, the 2 were clearly somewhat hesitant. They glanced at each other, and one of the cultivators coldly said, "Take out your keepsake and take a look." "This?" Xiaohua was somewhat helpless. His eyes slightly narrowed, and he immediately released his Buddhist sense. Who would have thought that the 4 walls of the small room were ice-cold, just like ice? His Buddhist sense simply couldn't penetrate, and he couldn't see what was outside the small room. He also couldn't determine whether or not the 2 people he killed wouldn't be discovered by bystanders. "Quickly take it out!" The other cultivator loudly shouted, and the flying sword in his hand once again extended towards Xiaohua's ribs, already touching Xiaohua's Taoist robe. "Here!" Xiaohua clapped his hand, and Feng Yi's keepsake was taken out. However, Xiaohua was still somewhat hesitant, and unhappily handed it over. "You take a look." The cultivator who used the flying sword to threaten Xiaohua's waist ordered the other person. That person extended his hand, and was about to take the keepsake from Xiaohua's hand. With a "hoo" sound, a small door about the height of a person opened behind the cultivator, and a somewhat hoarse voice sounded. "Feng Ying." The person who came was the old man dressed in camouflage, but at this moment, the old man had already removed the camouflage and revealed his true appearance. Of course, when he saw the situation inside the small room, his face became somewhat unsightly. "Oh? I was wondering why this junior martial brother Feng didn't come out for a long time. So it was the two junior martial brothers who were making things difficult for him." The old man coldly snorted and said, "This Feng Ying was sent by Yudong, and at the same time, senior martial brother Yu Bing also let him go. Why are you guys interrogating him like this? Do you think this old man's interrogation wasn't detailed enough? You want to find clues from Feng Ying's body? Senior martial brother Yu Ping!" The face of the cultivator who originally wanted the keepsake also became somewhat unsightly. He retracted his hand and cupped his hands. "This is the duty of us two brothers, please forgive us, senior martial brother." "Your duty is naturally yours," Yu Ping coldly said. "But this old man brought him in. If there was a problem, how could this old man not know? According to this old man's knowledge, in these past few years, Yudong didn't send many talents here, and he was already scolded by the sect master. Today, he sent junior martial brother Feng Ying here with great difficulty, and he's even a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. You guys are interrogating him like this. Are you dissatisfied with this old man, or with senior martial brother Yu Bing?" "Senior martial brother Yu Ping." The other disciple glanced at Xiaohua, wanting to say something, but hesitated, and also put away the flying sword in his hand. "What? You have nothing to say?" Yu Ping was unwilling to let go. "This old man recommended a few disciples 2 years ago, and when they just arrived here, they were made difficult by you guys. They couldn't stand it, and gave up such a good opportunity to turn stone into gold, turned around and left. Did you guys receive Yu's instructions, and insist on opposing senior martial brother Yu Bing?" "Senior martial brother!" The two people's faces were unsightly, and they transmitted in a low voice. "We already said just now, this is our duty. Turning stone into gold is an extremely secretive matter, and it's of great importance. Cultivators who aren't closely related to our Yu family absolutely can't participate, and any cultivators with the slightest trace of abnormality can't enter. Senior martial brother speaking so much in front of outsiders, aren't you afraid of being punished by Lord Sect Master?" "Punished? Humph, haven't we been punished enough?" Hearing the word punished, the old man became even more furious, but he didn't forget the middle-aged cultivator's reminder, and transmitted in a voice transmission. "Yudong's mouth is clumsy, and he hasn't recommended any cultivators here for 2 years. If he still can't complete the task this year, you naturally understand his situation. This disciple is an early foundation establishment disciple of the cleansing flower sect, and his cultivation seems to be pretty good. Yudong must have spent a lot of effort. Just now, he took the initiative to take out his token for this old man to examine, but this old man didn't look carefully. So what if there's something wrong with him? My Yu family's turning stone into gold plan has been going on for more than 10 years, and there hasn't been any problems. What kind of big waves can this little early foundation establishment cultivator cause? Besides, isn't the token in his hand the cleansing flower sect? This old man has seen it more than once or twice, can't you see it too?" Speaking up to here, the two middle-aged cultivators' gazes involuntarily fell on the token in Xiaohua's hand. Seeing the three suddenly transmitting their voices, Xiaohua's heart jumped, and seeing the three of them looking at the token in his hand, Xiaohua inwardly cried out in alarm. Presumably, senior martial brother Yu Bing also saw through Yudong's situation, so he took the initiative to give his stone marking token to Feng Ying. Yu Ping shifted his gaze away from the token in Xiaohua's hand, and transmitted his voice again. "This old man will say it here, you can check it as you wish. The matter of you Bing and Yu isn't something you and I should get involved in. Previously, you all drove away the disciple this old man chose, and this old man will slowly find an opportunity to settle accounts with you all in the future. This disciple, if you still want to send him back, then do it as soon as possible. Saying this, Yu Ping no longer spoke, and turned to leave the room. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping, the cultivator on the left said with a smile. This disciple's token is not bad, it's indeed a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. How can this one not let him pass? As for what Senior Marshal Brother said just now, it's actually false. This token naturally belongs to the cleansing flower sect, but this person may not be a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. This old man has never guaranteed that he is a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. If you don't check it carefully, and something happens, don't drag this old man into it. Yu Ping said with a cold smile, completely ungrateful. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing already let him in, what could possibly happen? The other cultivator also hurriedly said with a smile. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing is also a senior marshal brother that we all respect. We definitely don't have the intentions that Senior Marshal Brother said just now. Oh? Xiaohua's suspended heart relaxed again. From a bystander's point of view, he could already see that some people seemed to have found a gap in the struggle between them, an opportunity where others wouldn't check the token in his hand. -9. Chapter 2582. Senior Marshal Brothers, this token. Xiaohua loosened the reins only to grasp them better, and raised his token. Put it away! The two cultivators didn't have much coldness on their faces, as if they were really afraid that if Xiaohua turned around, they would offend that Yu Bing. Fenging, come with me! Yu Ping coldly snorted, waved his hand, and walked out of the room first. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua hurriedly put away the token, cupped his hands towards the two cultivators, and quickly chased after them. This Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping is really something. After the two left, the two cultivators also sat cross-legged on the ground. The one on the left complained. What kind of cultivators did he find before? Two loose cultivators, one chi refinement cultivator, with the head of a snake and the eyes of a rat, almost the same as him. They didn't meet the sect master's requirements at all. What's wrong with us blocking them? He, on the other hand, was unconsciously vigilant, and even pushed the responsibility to us. What is this? What does the matter of Yu Bing and Yu have to do with us? Forget it, let him be. The other cultivator coldly said. This Fenging, it doesn't seem inappropriate, even if it is inappropriate, so what? There are tens of thousands of cultivators who participate in the Midas Touch. Have you ever heard of any of them? He himself is well aware that we didn't check his origin, we only checked his cultivation and aptitude. The cultivator still didn't let it go. He was originally using this as an excuse to stir up trouble. That might not be the case. The other cultivator indifferently said. Yudong is favored by Yu Bing. Yudong's cultivation is good, but he's a man of few words. How many cultivators did he send over these years? He couldn't fulfill the sect master's requirements, and Yu Bing's face was also unsightly. No wonder Yu Ping was a bit impatient. Isn't that right? 9,000 cultivators, ah! The cultivator's face showed a trace of exaggeration. Sure! The other cultivator hurriedly put his finger to his mouth, and anxiously said, Do you want to die? This kind of thing, how can you casually say it? Yes, little brother was wrong. The cultivator's heart also trembled, and he hurriedly shut his mouth. How could Xiaohua know so many secrets? He didn't know that the other party had gone easy on him, and he was still proud of his cleverness. However, he also sensed that something was wrong. This place doesn't seem to be the disciples of the Huanhua sect. Why, are they all surnamed Yu? Xiaohua immediately thought of what Zhong Haoren had said. Could it be that this is the Yu family of the Fallen Gold Mountain? Fallen Gold Mountain. Turning stone into gold? What does this have to do with Huanhua sect? Based on the surname Yu, Yutong must be a disciple of Fallen Gold Mountain. He could enter the Huanhua sect by cheating, so he must have colluded with the Huanhua sect. Moreover, from the fact that Yutong was holding the Master's token that year, the Huanhua sect is also connected to Falling Gold Mountain. Maybe Falling Gold Mountain is a cultivation family controlled by the Huanhua sect? Xiaohua thought as he followed Yu Ping out of the small house. When he saw the situation outside the small house, he was even more shocked. In front of him was a huge space. There were countless buildings in this space, and these buildings were completely different from what Xiaohua had seen before. The buildings in the past were usually carved beams and painted pillars, and had an antique flavor. Even the buildings in the Sky Patrol City were made of huge stones. Although they were rare, they were not particularly rare. The buildings in front of him were all emitting a silver luster, as if all the buildings were plated with a layer of silver light. Even though they looked like pavilions, the light gave people the illusion that these pavilions were large celestial devices. Moreover, there were many such pavilions, huts, and passageways. They were all connected to each other, as if the entire space was a huge celestial device. The heaven and earth spiritual energy of the metal attribute is indeed dense, Xiaohua thought to himself. But what is the purpose of the Huanhua sect or Falling Gold Mountain to set up such a huge formation? This is the Sword Tomb. Xiaohua's astonished gaze moved away from the surrounding buildings, and he looked at the wall beside him. He could not help but stretch out his hand and touch it with his finger. A cold and smooth feeling came from the silver wall, and it was no different from a magical tool that was refined on a daily basis. Yu Ping seemed to have noticed Xiaohua's action, but he revealed a smile and did not stop him. Outside the small house was a rather large plaza, and the silver floor was incomparably smooth. One could almost see the reflections of people on it. There were not many cultivators walking around the plaza, but when they saw Yu Ping, they nodded slightly or bowed to him, as though they were very familiar with him. In fact, when these disciples saw Xiaohua, they also nodded slightly, making him feel very warm. I wonder how much Yudong has told you. After leading Xiaohua into this place, Yu Ping said with a smile. However, this old man does not wish to explain too much to you. Just like what this old man said, being able to participate in my Yu family's Midas touch is definitely the best choice you've made in your life. Yes. Xiaohua looked around and smiled apologetically. Even if this little one had some doubts previously, after seeing this place, this little one has no more doubts. It is just that, this little one did not expect that junior brother Yu did not say clearly that this place is actually the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. Hayes, you also know that Yudong's words are not good. He was afraid that you misunderstood, so he only said your Huanhua sect. However, the relationship between your Huanhua sect and my Fallen Gold Mountain, I believe, you should also know about it. Yu Ping sighed, as though he was explaining something. Of course, the more he explained, the more Xiaohua was confused. He. Xiaohua didn't answer and only laughed foolishly. Yu Ping saw this silly laugh and actually thought that Xiaohua had understood his meaning. He said, Since Yudong introduced you to me, he must have trusted you. Just now, this old man was risking my face to keep you here because I didn't want those two disciples who didn't know when to back down to ruining Yudong's good intentions for you. Wait until your cultivation level increases, Yu. As he said that, Yu Ping's face turned cold. Although you do not need to be loyal to my Yu family like the disciples of my Fallen Gold Mountain, as long as my Yu family has any matters, you must do your best and not slack off in the slightest. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiaohua acted very well. However, this matter must not harm the interests of my sect. If not, this disciple will not participate in this Shiqingjin sect and return to the Huanhua sect. Haha, junior brother Fengying, you are thinking too much. Yu Ping laughed. When has my Fallen Gold Mountain ever harmed the interests of the Huanhua sect? If there is such a day, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? Yu Ping and Xiaohua walked to a corner, and a hoarse voice sounded from the side of the silver wall that Xiaohua could not see. Senior brother Yuhua. Yu Ping seemed to be extremely familiar with this voice, and was even more afraid. Hearing this voice, he immediately shrunk his neck, and stood there respectfully, quietly waiting for this senior brother named Yuhua to appear. This is. Xiaohua also seemed to be familiar with this voice, and the corner of his mouth rose slightly, and a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, when that senior brother Yuhua turned around the corner, wasn't it a white-clothed old man with a slightly green face and a brandy nose who was in the late foundation establishment stage? Wasn't it the person who snatched the robin that Xiaohua had already caught and gave it to Yutong when Xiaohua was participating in the disciple selection in the Huahua sect? Humph. That Yuhua was indeed overbearing, and upon seeing Yu Ping, he coldly snorted. How do you know that my fallen gold mountain will harm the interests of the Huanhua sect? Good, senior brother knows. Yu Ping hurriedly smiled. This little brother is only assuming. This little brother is also clear in his heart that my fallen gold mountain and the Huanhua sect are bound together, so how could we do anything that would harm the Huanhua sect? What do you mean by bound together? Yuhua glanced at Yu Ping and laughed. Fallen Gold Mountain is Fallen Gold Mountain, and the Huanhua sect is the Huanhua sect. One is a cultivation family, and the other is a cultivation sect. Even if there are some interests involved, it is only a temporary cooperation. What are you talking about bound together? It is truly laughable. If this was known by the Huanhua sect, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? Yes, this little brother naturally understands. Yu Ping was not angry at all, and still lowered his head and smiled apologetically. The Huanhua sect is a towering tree, and Fallen Gold Mountain is only a small blade of grass under the tree. We are the stalks above the grass, and to be able to enjoy the shade under the big tree, we have to thank the Huanhua sect. We also have to thank senior brother Yuhua, this meritorious disciple who is negotiating with the Huanhua sect for the sake of Fallen Gold Mountain. And it's good that you know. Yuhua glanced at Xiaohua. Don't speak nonsense for no reason. If other people were to hear it, who knows what it would be like. You have to remember, trouble comes from the mouth. This is the disciple that was just selected? Yes. Yu Ping finally let out a breath and hurriedly laughed. This is also a disciple of the Huanhua sect. This disciple feels that his foundation is quite good. Oh? A disciple of the Huanhua sect? The corner of Yuhua's eye twitched, as if he was interested in Xiaohua. Bad. Xiaohua secretly complained, but he could only brace himself and step forward, bowing. This disciple greets senior brother. No need to call me senior brother, this old man is not a disciple of the Huanhua sect. It's just that I am extremely familiar with many of the Huanhua sect's elders. And you are? Yuhua opened his mouth to ask, but seemed to have thought of something, and waved his hand. Forget it, no matter which fellow's disciple you are, since you are here, you are the beneficiary of the Midas touch. I believe Yu Ping has already told you. Do your best, young man. The Huanhua sect will be your world in the future. Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple is endlessly grateful to senior brother, and the others. Xiaohua hurriedly smiled apologetically. And it's good that you know. Yuhua glanced at Xiaohua, and no longer asked about Xiaohua's origin, and walked away. When he walked past Xiaohua and Yu Ping, the ridicule at the corner of his mouth involuntarily appeared, and he did not hide it at all. -9. Chapter 2583. Yu Ping didn't dare to move. Seeing Yuhua cross half of the square and enter a corridor, he curled his lips and coldly snorted. He seemed to be muttering in a low voice. What's so great about him? He was a middle foundation establishment stage cultivator like me, but he did something for my falling gold mountain. That's why he benefited. He was promoted to an elder, but now he doesn't put falling gold mountain in his eyes. He keeps talking about Huanhua sect as if he's a disciple of Huanhua sect. Doesn't he know his surname is Yu? Xiaohua lowered his head and didn't look at Yu Ping. He only pricked up his ears. At this time, he already understood that this Yuhua was a disciple of Falling Gold Mountain. When Yutong entered Huanhua sect, it was this guy who did something for Falling Gold Mountain. Of course, whether this matter was what Yu Ping said was unknown. But Xiaohua understood that this Yuhua who had some relationship with Huan Huasek seemed to be at odds with Yu Bing who he saw in the mirror. Haha, yes, one is Yu Bing, the other is Yuhua. They were just born, and their parents were already trying to make them at odds. Xiaohua laughed in his heart, but then he muttered. There seems to be something strange. If it's a cultivator who has a good relationship with Huanhua sect, it's reasonable to ask a few questions when they see a junior, such as whose disciple they are, how their master and elders are doing, and so on. Especially the Midas touch, which helps people improve their cultivation. Wouldn't Fallen Gold Mountain want to sell it? Strange, strange. Yu Ping muttered a few words. Seeing that Xiaohua was still obediently lowering his head, he wasn't in a good mood to explain anything to Xiaohua. At this time, Xiaohua whispered, Senior Martial Brother, isn't this Senior Martial Brother Yuhua a disciple of my Huanhua sect? He wants to, Yu Ping coldly said. But Huanhua sect doesn't want him. Now he's an elder of Fallen Gold Mountain, how can he enter Huanhua sect? Then he ignored Xiaohua and left first. Xiaohua suppressed the doubts in his heart, and followed him into a corridor. This corridor looked very strange. It wasn't straight, but rather tangled and complicated, like a spider web. Yu Ping led Xiaohua into the corridor, and after walking for another half a cigarette, they arrived at a smooth wall. He patted his hand and took out a token. Activating his magic power, the token flashed with the same silver brilliance as the wall. Yu Ping pressed the token against the wall. Once the token and the wall came into contact, it immediately let out a low sword hum, and the area around 10 feet around them began to shake. Thongning, place your stone medallion on top, Yu Ping instructed. Yes, Xiaohua responded. He didn't circulate his magic power, and placed the jade slip in front of him. Woo, a suction force came from the place where the jade slip came in contact with the wall, firmly sucking the jade slip to the wall. Immediately after, Xiaohua felt the jade slip emitting heat. Let go, Yu Ping said. Following Xiaohua's release, the jade slip instantly melted, turning into a ball of jade liquid that spread out on the wall. Then, it began to spin from the inside out. When the jade liquid seemed to spin into a rune, the jade liquid went deep into the wall that seemed abnormally hard. At the same time, a rune similar to the jade liquid flashed on the wall and disappeared. A small door about the height of a person appeared in the wall. Xiaohua's gaze swept over it. Inside, there was a small triangular room that was similar to the one he came in from. Junior Brother Feng! Yu Ping introduced his medallion, then took out a small jade slip and handed it to Xiaohua. He smiled and said, Originally, I should have brought you around here to see the other senior brothers of the Huanhua sect and Fallen Gold Mountain. However, time is running out, and you've come a bit late. Junior brother should also be clear that although this is a fast method, there is also a price to pay. Not to mention the pain of the physical body, there will also be problems in the meridians and other places. The most important thing is that junior brother still has to cooperate with this bitter chew method. This is a secret method that my Fallen Gold Mountain created by combining the methods commonly used by the disciples of the Huanhua sect. Junior brother still needs to look at it. When the time comes, if you can't follow the instructions of the secret method and guide the innate gold chi into your meridians and transform it into your own true essence, not only will this opportunity be gone with the wind, even your own cultivation will have the possibility of all your previous efforts being wasted. Is it that serious? Xiaohua hurriedly asked. It seems. Junior brother Yudong didn't mention it, Yu Ping said with some displeasure. Without any risk, you can easily advance from the early stage of foundation establishment to the middle stage of foundation establishment, or even the late stage of foundation establishment. How can there be such a cheap thing in the world? Junior brother must have already thought it through clearly. If it was that simple, I'm afraid that my Fallen Gold Mountain would have already been filled with foundation establishment cultivators. Why would you need to find other fellow Taoists? Hee. Xiaohua laughed and didn't continue to pester him. He asked again, I just don't know how much time you'll give me? If this secret method is complicated, this disciple doesn't have the confidence to fully comprehend it. This old man can't say for sure. Perhaps several days, perhaps 10 days. Of course, it could also be 10 days. Junior brother should comprehend it earlier. The earlier you comprehend it, the earlier you can grasp it. Otherwise, if you suddenly start, junior brother will be caught unprepared. Yu Ping replied without hesitation. Then, is this disciple inside this small room? Can I come out? Xiao Hua looked at the small room and was somewhat hesitant. Naturally, you can't come out. Yu Ping was somewhat impatient. Junior brother, just treat it as seclusion. When you come out of seclusion, if by chance, I'm afraid that this old man will have to call junior brother senior brother. Hee, I hope so. Xiao Hua was so happy that his eyes were about to close. However, he still didn't want to go in. At this moment, a kind of fear emerged from the back of his head, as if someone was spying on him. Who? Xiao Hua's heart stirred and he released his Buddhist sense. However, his back and all around him were completely empty. There wasn't even any divine sense sweeping over him. Should I go in or not? Xiao Hua felt that this place was not good. However, if he were to turn hostile, the cultivator spying on him might not be any weaker than a golden core cultivator. Although he could cause a ruckus, how would he escape? How would he find out the secrets of the Huanhua sect and Falling Gold Mountain? All of that would be for naught. How can one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? This young master wants to see if this small room can trap this young master. Xiao Hua secretly thought in his heart. If so, many thanks to senior brother. Xiao Hua knew that he couldn't hesitate at this moment. After cupping his hands and thanking him, he stepped into the small room. As Xiao Hua's figure entered the small room, Yu Ping waved his hand and the whole slowly melted, as if a melted liquid was gathering in one place. Yu Ping, who sent this disciple here? An ice-cold voice came from the silver building. It was very loud, but it was impossible to identify its origin. Yu Ping's heart trembled. He immediately bowed respectfully and said to the sky, "This is the Huanhua sect disciple that Yudong chose to send here. Her name is Feng Ning." Oh? Huanhua sect disciple. This Yudong is really daring. If the Huanhua sect were to find out about this, wouldn't it be troublesome? Although the cold voice sounded a little surprised, it didn't sound surprised at all. Yudong has always been cautious. Yu Ping smiled apologetically and said, "If he thinks it's okay, then it's okay. Moreover, he hasn't chosen a disciple yet. This time, if he doesn't find a suitable disciple, I'm afraid he will be punished by the sect master. Perhaps he has no other choice. Besides, there were also many Huanhua sect disciples before." Humph. The ice-cold voice snorted coldly. Yu Ping was so frightened that he lowered his head and didn't dare to defend himself. "It's true that you were punished because you didn't find a cultivator and couldn't complete the mission. However, if the cultivator sent here is not suitable and leaks the news, or ruins my grand plan, then it won't be a matter of punishment. It will be a consequence of your head being separated from your body." After hearing this, Yu Ping waited for a long while, but didn't say anything else. He tilted his head and looked at the silver building. The sky was also silver. He shrank his neck and hurriedly left. Above the silver sky that Yu Ping was afraid of, a light cloud rose. It had the atmosphere of an immortal. However, these light clouds weren't truly pale white. Instead, they had a kind of heaviness and an indescribable sharpness. They were completely filled with silver. Above the silver clouds, a well-built gold-core old man wearing a silver robe stood there. This old man had silver-white hair and a silver-white beard. Even his face faintly flickered with a silver-white color, making him appear different from others. The strangest thing was that this old man's eyes also emitted a faint silver-white light. He was looking at a tiger-shaped magic tool in his hand. As expected, the mystic artifact was also silvery white in color. On the back of the mystic artifact, there was an oval mirror that was emitting a faint silvery white light. The light reflected the light in the old man's eyes, revealing the situation within the various buildings under the silver clouds. Just like Xiao Hua's small hut, through this tiger-shaped magic tool, the old man was able to see over 10,000 small huts. The vast majority of these huts had a cultivator. These cultivators were all at the early or middle stage of foundation establishment. There were even a few at the late stage. However, these cultivators' Taoist robes were different. They clearly weren't from the same sect. Another similarity was that each cultivator held a small jade slip in their hands. Some were using their divine sense to enter, while others were closing their eyes and pondering. After roughly looking through it, the old man clapped his hand, and a silver-white brilliance appeared on his palm. The tiger-shaped artifact disappeared into the old man's hand, and the silver light in the old man's eyes also dissipated, revealing his pitch-black eyes. However, within those eyes, there were traces of silver light. Wait a few more days. When the people are all gathered, the Midas touch can be activated. The old man seemed very satisfied. A trace of a smile appeared on his face. However, this smile seemed somewhat forced. If the old man wasn't truly happy, then there must be something wrong with the muscles on his face. -9. Chapter 2584. Immediately, the old man turned around and flew for a moment. With a flick of his sleeve, a light flashed, and a huge portal appeared out of thin air. The old man flashed into it, and then the portal disappeared again. Xiao Hua saw that the old man was in a space that was several times larger than the square that Xiao Hua had just seen. This space was empty, and there were only 2 balls of silver-white light rolling in the air. These 2 balls of light looked exactly the same at first glance, but as the old man flew closer, one of the balls of light had a silver-white brilliance mixed with fiery red threads, and a threatening heat rushed over. The other ball of light had a silver-white brilliance mixed with azure threads, and a bone-piercing chill also rushed over. In the face of such extreme heat and extreme cold, the old man's face showed even more satisfaction. He waved his hand, and a dozen silver lights flew out from his sleeve and hit various places in the space. The silver light in the space flourished, and countless strange runes appeared, flowing on the surface of the entire space for a moment before disappearing. Thus, the old man patted his hand and took out the tiger-shaped magic weapon. Under the urging of his spiritual power, the tiger-shaped magic weapon gradually transformed, and a lifelike silver tiger appeared in midair. Roar! The silver tiger raised its head and roared. The golden spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into the silver tiger's bloody mouth, and a hurricane was born from the space. However, although the hurricane was strong, the old man's robe was like cast iron, and it did not move at all. When the silver tiger soared to more than 2 feet tall, the silver tiger stopped absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Speed! The old man made a gesture with his hand and pointed at the silver ball of light with azure threads. The silver tiger opened its mouth and spat out a misty silver light. The silver light fell on the ball of light, and like hot water poured on a snowball, the ball of light quickly melted, revealing a gap of 1 person's height. "Little friend Zhang, are you ready?" The old man's voice lowered, which was rare, and his address was even more amiable. "Sect Master Yu Qingtian is so impatient." A clear female voice came from the gap, and then a woman's figure appeared in the gap. Back to Xiao Hua, under the prying eyes of Sect Master Yu Qingtian, he had no choice but to enter the hut. However, he felt that prying eyes were still there, and this feeling was like a fishbone stuck in his throat, making him very uncomfortable. He had no choice but to pretend to take out the jade slip and carefully read it. However, as he read it, he really went deep into the secret technique and concentrated. After the time it took to eat a meal, he withdrew his divine sense from the jade slip, and immediately, without hesitation, he waved his hand and took out a sword slip. However, as soon as he took it out, he was startled. He raised his head and looked around. Fortunately, the feeling of being spied eyes on, and he was the only one in the hut. This cultivator should be around the middle stage of the gold core, and he is relying on some magic weapon. Xiao Hua gave Yu Qingtian a rough estimate. Then, he immersed his divine sense into the sword bamboo slip and looked at the cultivation method for half a meal. Only then did he put away the sword bamboo slip. He frowned slightly, and closed his eyes to ponder. His brows gradually relaxed, and the hand seals in Xiaohua's hand also slowly formed, and a silver brilliance gradually emerged from his hand. Finally it condensed into a silver-white small sword in his hand. Strange! Xiaohua's gaze fell on the small sword, and he muttered in his heart. How could this falling gold mountains Yu family have a secret technique for sword cultivation? On the surface, this secret technique looks like a cultivation method for Dao cultivators, and the first half is about how to cater to the different fluctuations of the formation, and how to guide the sword qi in the formation into the meridians in the body. This formation, perhaps, is the formation that turns stone into gold. And the second half is how to condense the sword qi into true essence. But, according to this secret technique, how can the sword qi be turned into true essence? How can it be guided into the meridians? This sword qi can only be formed into sword origin, right? Moreover, the second half of this secret technique is extremely obscure and vague. It can be said without mercy that it hides a lot of key things. If you comprehend it together with this sword cultivation method, you will be able to understand it. You family, what are they doing? Xiaohua was absolutely puzzled. Are they cultivating their own power? Do they want to break away from the washing flower sect and become a cultivation sect? I can only understand it like this. It seems that all the cultivation families want to break away from their identity as a family. If you family can turn stone into gold, maybe they can create a group of cultivators, and becoming a sect won't be difficult. I'm afraid this is what you want this washing flower sect disciple to promise you. Xiaohua secretly laughed, put away the jade slip and sword slip, and stood up. This young master should also go out and take a look. See if this young master's guess is correct. Thinking, Xiaohua pinched his hand, and a yellow brilliance flashed around his body, and he was about to use the earth escape technique. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua's figure moved, and the silver luster under his feet became even brighter, and even some brilliance was produced. This is bad. This floor is indeed not made of earth or stone. Xiaohua secretly cursed. His guess when he entered the room just now was actually true. Immediately, Xiaohua walked to the wall, stretched out his arm, and placed his hand flat on the wall. A kind of ice-cold and brilliant feeling passed through his palm. Xiaohua even used his finger to knock on the wall a few times, and a clear sound rang out again. Xiaohua thought for a moment, and opened his left hand. In the illusion breaker eye, a layer of faint and thin silver brilliance surrounded him. This brilliance was extremely dense, and there were no flaws. This is troublesome, Xiaohua complained incessantly, and slapped his hand, taking out the rabbit's spirit talisman. After a slight hesitation, he hit it on the wall. Fortunately, although the silver wall looked extremely dense, and even a needle couldn't pierce it, when the rabbit's spirit talisman hit it, it emitted specks of silver brilliance, and the spirit talisman sank in, disappearing without a trace. Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart calmed down, and he secretly laughed as he hit the other spirit talismans on the wall. After a moment, Xiaohua carefully grabbed with his hand, and a small hole appeared in the middle of the rabbit's spirit talisman. Xiaohua released his spiritual sense from the hole, and seeing that there were no traces of anyone else, he worriedly stuck his head out. After confirming that he could escape from the room, he retracted his head back, and kept the rabbit's spirit talisman. Since I can escape so easily, I will act according to the situation. In the end, this young master doesn't believe that the Yu family won't reveal their true colors. This young master doesn't believe that there will be anyone who can block this young master's escape, Xiaohua said with a cold sneer. Thinking about this, Xiaohua kept the spirit talisman, and sat down cross-legged. He took out the secret techniques of the Yu family and the sword arts of sword cultivators, and carefully compared them, slowly comprehending them. Not to mention that Xiaohua had fallen into the small room of the Yu family, he relied on his profound strength, and didn't care about the danger of this trap. Instead, he calmed his heart, comprehended the secret techniques of the Yu family, and waited for the Yu family to reveal the truth. Furthermore, the Jindan cultivators in the discussion hall were all dressed up, and they personally led their disciples to attack the arrogant sword cultivators according to their previous arrangements, and to open the curtains to the final battle. Before leaving, the Jindan cultivators in the discussion hall gathered together again, and discussed for a long time. They seemed to have exhausted their minds, and considered all the arrangements, attacks, and even retreating if they failed. They understood in their hearts that this battle was crucial, and they were staking it all on a single throw. If they couldn't seize the opportunity to attack first, and catch the sword cultivators off guard, then the Tao cultivators wouldn't be able to recover from their previous disadvantage, and they would be defeated sooner or later. Thus, the people who usually had some grudges during discussions in the discussion hall didn't dare to be negligent, and they openly spoke their thoughts, as well as the thoughts of others. Sure enough, after brainstorming together, they really did find quite a few details that they had overlooked. As a matter of fact, in the vicinity of Clear Sky Cave, Kunlun Sex Yuan Shongyu, Imperial Thunder Sex Gon Mo, and Clear Leaf Sex Jihong all wore grave expressions as they urged the tens of thousands of disciples of the three sects to fly quietly while discussing something in low voices. Yuan Zhongyu's spiritual sense swept out, and he looked at the gloomy sky with spots of light in the distance, and said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, fellow Taoist Ji, I'm afraid that it will be troublesome for us to head to Clear Cave today." "That's right, when I heard that the sword cultivators were actually building a city here, I felt that it was funny. The sword cultivators who have always been arrogant actually imitated our Tao cultivators to build a defense, and this is simply stealing it. In the eyes of us experts, this trick is just showing off." Jihong also nodded. "But before we left, after listening to everyone's careful analysis, I realized that there was indeed something fishy about this. That's right, today's sword cultivators are no longer the simple-minded people in our eyes who don't know when to advance or retreat, and who only rely on the sharpness of their flying swords to flaunt their superiority. Think about Qin Jian's schemes over the past few years, and how many of our fellow Taoists have died under his sword, and think about how many times we have fallen into the sword cultivators' schemes in this great battle. It makes me shudder." Yuan Zhongyu bit his lips and narrowed his eyes as he spoke. "Perhaps this Clear Cave is another sword cultivator's trap." Jihong didn't hide her guilty conscience. "Now that I think about it, it was really reckless of me to ask for a battle. Hee, that's exactly what I'm thinking." Yuan Zhongyu also laughed bitterly in a low voice. "But now that we're already here, the arrow on the bow has to be shot." At this point, Yuan Zhongyu looked at Qian Mo, who was only looking forward and didn't say anything. He then exchanged glances with Jihong and said, "That cunning Qin Jian was killed by 3 juniors, and his lifetime of fame has been created by these 3 kids. Fellow Taoist Qian, congratulations, your Imperial Thunder Sect Xiaohua is now very famous." "Humph, Xiaohua is just the most ordinary disciple in my Imperial Thunder Sect," Qian Mo said indifferently. "He even entered my Imperial Thunder Sect as a rogue cultivator. There are many more disciples in my Imperial Thunder Sect who are more outstanding than him." -9. Chapter 2585. Hee, fellow Taoist Qian, in this war, there isn't a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect who has more battle merits than him, right? Yuan Zhongyu said with a smile. That's because Xiaohua's luck is good. At the same time, it's also because my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples are good at teaching. Qian Mo didn't want to talk about Xiaohua. He pointed his finger forward and said, "Now my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples who are more outstanding than Xiaohua are gathered here. I believe that each of them can achieve battle merits comparable to Xiaohua's." Yuan Zhongyu and Jihong smiled bitterly at the same time. They looked at each other again, and their eyes were filled with bitterness. It was as if what they said just now was like a chicken talking to a duck and couldn't be understood. Also, fellow Taoist Yuan and fellow Taoist Ji just now. This Qian can't agree. This Qian didn't care about their expressions and continued. Sword cultivators are just barbarians. How can they be compared to the great sects of my Tao sect? Although the sword cultivators had the upper hand in the early stages of the war, they only managed to gain the upper hand. If they fought against my Dao sect on the territory of the country of Xi and the country of Lian, they would definitely be lacking in strength. The advantage they had in the early stages can't be easily maintained. As long as the sects of the three kingdoms of cultivation really compete with them, they will definitely flee upon hearing the news. Ahem, ahem. Yuan Zhongyu coughed twice. In his heart, he was puzzled as to why Qian Mo had such a good feeling. He reminded him. The sword cultivators were able to destroy Ermochin Cave at the beginning of the war, and even built a big city here without anyone noticing. I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? So what if they aren't simple? Qian Mo's tone was still indifferent. The Kunlun sect, the Clear Leaf sect, and my Imperial Thunder sect are all great sects of the three kingdoms of cultivation. They are all sects that reside in the conference hall. If we don't come here, who will? If we don't take this risk, who will? Seeing Qian Mo wearing the label of Great Sect on his head, Yuan Zhongyu smiled and said, That's right. The Imperial Thunder sect is a famous great sect in the country of Xi. In my heart, this great sect that values its reputation more than its life is stronger than the likes of Shanghua sect and Qiqiao sect. My Kunlun sect is only in the country of Lian. If we were in the country of Xi, I'm afraid we would be ranked behind the Imperial Thunder sect. That's right. I don't know too much about the Imperial Thunder sect, but I've worked with fellow Taoist Qian in the past few years. Fellow Taoist Qian's magnanimity and uprightness have made me sigh with emotion. Presumably, among the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, from sect master Qian Lazy to the most common aura refining disciple, all of them have the same spirit as fellow Taoist Qian. My Bright Leaf sect truly admires you. The disciples of our two sects will be able to interact with each other even better, allowing my Qingyi sect disciples to benefit greatly. Fellow Taoists, you're belittling yourselves, Qian Mo said with a smile. My Imperial Thunder sect has the foundation of a great sect, but I'm not as noble as you say. I only do things that are worthy of my conscience. I don't care about other people's opinions. Then, this battle, what do you think, fellow Taoist Qian? Yuan Zhongyu's eyes flickered, and he said with some hesitation. We've already made careful arrangements and preparations to attack the Sword Cultivator City, but the disciples of the three sects must attack and defend, and have a master and a subordinate. I think fellow Taoist Qian is full of wisdom. This battle should be presided over by fellow Taoist Qian. Yes, yes. Jihong quickly smiled apologetically and said, I think so too. This? Qian Mo's eyes flashed with a hint of eagerness, but he was still hesitant. He said, Fellow Taoist Yuan should be in charge of the Battle of Clear Sky Cave. This has already been decided in the meeting hall. I'm afraid it's against the rules for me to temporarily take over, right? Although Qian Mo's words were questioning, it was obvious that he was asking for their opinions. How could Yuan Zhongyu and Jihong not understand? They hurriedly said, Fellow Taoist Qian, don't decline. In a great battle, the ones who control the situation are always the sages. Fellow Taoist, you haven't been on duty in the meeting hall and have never shown your talent in planning. Now is the time for fellow Taoists to show your ambition and contribute to our Tao sect. That's right. With our disciples in fellow Taoists' hands, only fellow Taoists' selfless heart can make us feel at ease. Jihong added. Good. Qian Mo clapped his hands and said, Since fellow Taoists think so highly of me, this seat, I'll take it for the time being. However, there's something that I want to make clear. The merits of this battle will be split equally between the three of us. I won't take any more than that. Good. Fellow Taoist Qian's noble character and unquestionable integrity can be seen from this. Yuan Zhongyu and Jihong simultaneously raised their thumbs up and said happily, Let's go. Let's increase our speed. This clear cave is not far ahead. Now that the sky has just turned bright, it's time to attack the sword cultivators and catch them off guard. Qian Mo waved his hand and the mana in his feet surged as he rushed forward. Yuan Zhongyu and Jihong laughed and said, Fellow Taoist Qian, your flying technique is obviously faster than ours. Aren't you bullying the two of us? Ha! Qian Mo laughed heartily in front of the two of them. Following Qianmo's command, the tens of thousands of disciples from the three sects indeed increased their flying speed. In less than an hour, they arrived in front of the clear cave. Although the Tao sect disciples had made countless guesses before arriving, when they saw the huge city in front of them that was tens of feet tall and stretched for several miles, they were still somewhat stunned. At this moment, the sun had already risen and the rare cool sunlight shone on the city walls. The city walls seemed to be completely transparent, as if they were made of ice. The colorful light reflected off the city walls dazzled the eyes of the crowd of cultivators. Sword cultivators! What are they doing? Qianmo and the rest also groaned. They raised their hands and signaled all the cultivators to stop in midair. One! An ear-piercing sound of swords rang out from behind the city walls. It was obvious that the sword cultivators had also discovered the whereabouts of the large group of cultivators. Rays of sword light flashed, and countless sword cultivators flew to the top of the city walls. Fellow Taoist Yuan, is the sword cultivators planning to build another sky patrol city in this clear cave? Qianmo asked softly. Yuan Zhongyu's face was also filled with astonishment. His spiritual sense swept across the ice city and he shook his head. The Sky Patrol City has been around for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. How can this ice city be compared to the Sky Patrol City? Even so, we can't underestimate it. The city walls of this ice city are protected by the Sword Cultivator's sword array, which has blocked our spiritual sense. We can't see what secrets he has in the city. Jihong was a little worried. She whispered, "Clear Cave has an ice city. Could it be that there are other similar big cities? If that's the case, we have to pay attention to the intentions of the sword cultivators. Maybe the purpose of their battle here is far from what we expected." Qianmo narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Even if there is such an ice city, we can set up arrays. Attacking cities and seizing territories is the strength of us cultivators. The sword cultivators are actually playing with their weaknesses and avoiding their strengths. Aren't they seeking their own deaths? Fellow Taoists, listen to my orders. My thunder-controlling sect disciples will set up arrays and attack the front. Kunlun sect disciples will attack the left wing and Clear Leaf sect disciples will attack the right wing. We will talk after we have destroyed this ice city. All right, we will listen to fellow Taoist Qian's orders." Yuan Zhongyu glanced at Jihong. Both of them let out a long breath. They took out the tokens in their hands and were about to give orders. Qianmo sneered, as if he didn't see their expressions. He raised his hand and activated his transcendence energy. He shouted, "Thunder-controlling sect disciples, listen to my orders." Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a phoenix cry sounded. A ray of emerald green light flew out from the ice city and rushed straight into the sky. A cold-faced woman wearing an emerald green sword robe appeared from the sword light. It was Black Phoenix Sword Sect's Ruochang. Ruochang's eyes were still filled with killing intent. She coldly looked at the tens of thousands of cultivators. Her gaze then fell on Qianmo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Jihong. "Audacious cultivators, you actually dare to invade my Mo Qingqing!" Ruochang lightly reprimanded, like the cry of a phoenix. The emerald green sword light around her flickered. "Ha, what a joke!" Qianmo flew a few feet forward and laughed. "This is the territory of my country of Xi. It has always been the territory of my Tao cultivators. When did it become the territory of your sword cultivators? You sword cultivators built a city on my Tao sect's land. You have already violated my Tao sect's taboo. Now that my Tao sect disciples have come to encircle you, you actually dare to bite back? Which sect are you swordsmen from? Why aren't you reporting your name? If you surrender early, I can still spare your lives." Heh, this sword knows that cultivators are all sharp-tongued. This sword only said one sentence, and you actually have so many words to deal with this sword. Ruochang said coldly, "This sword can't win against you in words. You and the rest, show me your true abilities." After saying this, the sword light around Ruochang's body flickered. The emerald green brilliance gradually gathered. Finally, With a wave of Ruochang's hand, an emerald green phoenix sword intent flew out. The phoenix's body overflowed with cold light. The ice-cold sword light reflected the sunlight above the ice city. It was extremely beautiful. Following the release of Ruochang's sword intent, the flying swords around the ice city let out a wang sword cry. It was as if it was going to resound through the 9 heavens. Moreover, this sword cry seemed to be mixed with an extremely powerful secret technique that could pierce a person's soul. Although some of the lower-level disciples who were slightly closer to the ice city covered their ears with their hands, their figures still fell. Ah! 3rd grade illusory sword. Sword array. Seeing Ruochang release the sword intent, that incomparably powerful phoenix, and the surrounding flying swords responding to it, Qianmo and the rest's faces unconsciously changed. The 3rd grade illusory sword was comparable to the late Gold Core stage. In terms of attack power, it was close to the early nascent soul stage. Qianmo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong were all middle Gold Core stage cultivators. It seemed that it would not be easy for them to deal with Ruochang. That's right, this sword is Black Phoenix Sword Sex Ruochang. Ruochang coldly said. You Gold Core stage cultivators in the conference hall are indeed biting off more than you can chew. You actually did not even investigate the background of my sword cultivator. You don't even know who this sword is. You and the rest can win against this array? You are merely a 3rd grade illusory swordsman. What is there to be proud of? Qianmo retorted sarcastically. We conference hall cultivators are more concerned about many things. How could we investigate all the illusory swordsmen? Moreover, we Dao sect cultivators disdain to arrange spies among our sword cultivators. If we want to fight, we will fight fair and square. Unlike you and the rest, who used all kinds of despicable means to plant spies among our cultivators and investigate all the cultivators in our conference hall. -9. Chapter 2586. Oh? A 3rd grade illusory sword cultivator? Ruochang's mouth revealed a trace of mockery as he sneered. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will fight 100 battles without slacking. You don't even know which illusory swordsmen are. How can you win this battle? It won't happen. Qianmo waved his hand and laughed. In a war, we need to use open schemes. All schemes are paper tigers that can't withstand a single blow. Isn't Qin Jian of the Void Heaven Sword School always scheming? In the end, he died in the hands of 3 kids from my Dao sect. In this old man's opinion, a 3rd grade illusory swordsman is just SOSO. Ha! Ruochang let out a rare laugh. Qianmo, you're a Gold Core cultivator, but when it comes to eloquence, even this sword can't compare. But when it comes to cultivation, even a foundation establishment disciple from your Imperial Thunder School can't compare. Qianmo's heart skipped a beat as he sneered. Isn't it the terrifying phoenix from my Imperial Thunder School? Do you think this old man doesn't know? Ruochang raised his eyebrows as if he suddenly understood what Qianmo was thinking. He asked curiously, Oh? You actually know about the terrifying phoenix? This sword really underestimated you. But where is the terrifying phoenix? If he's here, this sword will really run away now. As he spoke, the murderous aura in his eyes became even stronger, as he swept his gaze over the disciples of the Imperial Thunder School. You're just a 3rd grade illusory female swordsman. How can he put you in his eyes? Qianmo saw that Ruochang didn't say who the terrifying phoenix was and was somewhat disappointed. He concealed it and said, This old man naturally sent him to other places. Ruochang didn't speak and coldly swept his gaze over the disciples of the Imperial Thunder School as if he couldn't find the terrifying phoenix. After a moment he sighed. Alas, if I knew that you Gold Core cultivators were as stupid as Jurassic beasts, this sword wouldn't have wasted so much effort. If we attacked directly, you would have become my sword cultivators' prisoners. Qianmo and the others' faces changed. Just as they were about to speak, Ruochang said, Don't tell this sword that you don't even know who the terrifying phoenix is? Of course we know! Yuan Zhongyu couldn't bear it and shouted. But why should we tell you? Wasn't the bounty for sword cultivators extremely high? Look for it yourselves. Actually, when I said you were Jurassic beasts, you weren't here yet. LV Ruochang seemed to be in a good mood. He said as if he was chatting with a good friend. Haven't you thought about it? Why is it that in this battle, the Golden Core cultivators that your Dao sect sent to the meeting hall are only at the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm? Why isn't there even a disciple in the late Golden Core stage? See, it was as if this sentence had woken them up from their daze. Qian Mo and the other two middle-stage Jin and stage cultivators' faces suddenly changed as they sucked in a breath of cold air. How do you know so much about the situation in my discussion hall? Qian Mo almost cried out involuntarily. His previous calmness was completely gone. Indeed, if this inconspicuous Lu Ruochang had said the names of these three people, it would have been fine. After all, the cultivators of the Dao sect all wore the Taoist robes of their respective sections. The Imperial Thunder sect, the Kunlun sect, and the Clear Leaf sect were the three people who had entered the conference hall, so their names were easy to say. However, this LV Ruochang actually knew the cultivation levels of all the Golden Core cultivators in the conference hall. How could they not be shocked? In particular, all the Golden Core cultivators in the conference hall of the Sky Patrol City were at the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm. There was not a single cultivator in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. This strange situation, even for Yuan Zhongyu and the other two, they had never thought of it. They were assigned to lead the disciples of their respective sects into battle. They all regarded themselves as indispensable elites in their sections. They felt that they were valued by the sect master, and that none of the other Golden Core disciples were more suitable than them. Even he himself knew that this conference hall was a place to nurture disciples with potential. It was like the front line of a war. They boasted that they were strategizing and had wisdom in their hearts. After this war, they would definitely become the most dazzling figures in the sect. All the rewards and conveniences in the sect would be open to them for their cultivation. Even though they had been discussing in the conference hall for several years, they had been together day and night, and were very familiar with each other. They were also used to each other's cultivation levels. However, as LV Ruochang said, they had never thought about why their respective sects did not send a cultivator in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. A cultivator in the late stage of the Golden Core realm against a swordsman in the third grade of the illusory sword seemed to be a real match, right? A cultivator in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm against a swordsman in the third grade of the illusory sword. How could it be said that they met a good match? Perhaps even three cultivators in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm would not be able to defeat LV Ruochang in the third grade of the illusory sword. You! Who exactly are you? Ji Hong could not help but ask. Her face was a little pale. Haha! I am LV Ruochang from the Black Phoenix Sword sect. LV Ruochang did not hide anything. I have already said it clearly. I have no intention of deceiving you. Humph, if it weren't for our sects, we wouldn't have sent our senior brothers in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. Qian Mo calmed his mind and snorted coldly. To deal with weak sword cultivators like you, we only need to send our senior brothers in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. At this point, Qian Mo purposely added, how about Qin Jian? Wasn't he also in the third grade of the illusory sword? But he was still killed by 3 kids from our Dao sect. If we were to kill Qin Jian, one of us would be enough. Ha! LV Ruochang put away his coldness and laughed out loud. It seems that things are not what you think. The warriors of the Sword region all know about your cultivation and strength. Let's not talk about Qin Jian. How many Golden Core realm cultivators did he kill? He was careless and died in the hands of a few Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. I'm afraid it's a little unjust. However, I know very well that if you were to go, you would only end up dying in Qin Jian's hands. Ignorant, arrogant. Qian Mo said coldly. As he spoke, he activated his magic power as if he was about to give an order. Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. Ruochang pointed his finger and said, "Actually, I know why your Dao sect only sent you cultivators in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm." "Why?" Qianmo and the other two asked almost at the same time. Obviously, the three of them were also suspicious about this matter. "It's very simple." Ruochang raised his hand and said, When did you arrive at Sky Patrol City? Where was the place where my sword cultivator warriors fought against you?" Qianmo and the rest frowned slightly as if they did not understand. The warriors of the Sword region had invaded the country of Shi for a long time, and you only realized that all the fighting was in the country of Shi. Your nascent soul realm cultivators must have wanted to go into battle long ago, right? They knew that you would definitely not win this battle, so they sent you disciples in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm to your deaths. The earlier you die, the earlier they would arrive at Sky Patrol City, and the lesser the territory of the country of Shi occupied by the disciples of the Sword region. Look at the surroundings of Emochin Cave. It's just an ice city, do you know? There are many other ice cities in the country of Shi. If it's delayed for a few more years, there will be even more of these ice cities. By then, even if a nascent soul realm cultivator came, he would not be able to turn the situation around. This? Qianmo and the rest were stunned. It seemed that Ruochang's words made sense. Fellow Taoists, don't listen to her nonsense. It was still Jihong who was quick-witted. She seemed to have heard the hint in Ruochang's words and hurriedly reminded them. Ha! Seeing a flash of realization in Qianmo and Yuan Shongyu's eyes, Ruochang laughed out loud. With a wave of his hand, an emerald-green sword light soared into the sky. The sharp cry of a phoenix resounded. This sword only needs to say a few words to break your hearts. How can you Golden Core realm cultivators from the discussion hall be a match for the warriors of the Sword region? Although I'm just guessing, it seems that you are indeed here to die. Warriors, kill. Following the cry of the sword, on the walls of the Ice City, dozens of strong sword light flashed. A huge flying sword whistled through the air and pierced towards the disciples of the three sects who were on guard but did not form a defensive formation. "We've been tricked. Quick, form a team and counterattack." Qianmo and the rest were shocked. When Qianmo gave the order, Yuan Shongyu and Jihong did not care about their flattery towards Qianmo and hurriedly used their powers to command their disciples. In fact, Qianmo and the rest were indeed tricked. They did not expect that Ruochang, who was a third-grade illusory swordsman, would actually try to buy time for the sword cultivators when they were about to meet them. And it was precisely because of these words that Qianmo and the rest rushed over. The advantage of having the upper hand silently disappeared. Of course, Ruochang did have some doubts about the fact that the cultivators of the discussion hall were only in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. This was because when she was setting up the sword formation, she had already said that in the early days when the sword cultivators ambushed other cultivators, it was because a few late-stage Golden Core realm cultivators suddenly became pregnant. Under the shackles of heaven and earth, the sword cultivators' sword formation was broken and their efforts were in vain. Therefore, she had investigated the situation of the cultivators in the discussion hall. When she discovered this strange matter, she was also puzzled. She did not know what the nascent soul realm cultivators of the three kingdoms were planning. However, she was also clear that when it came to strategies and formations, there was no lack of capable cultivators in the Dao sect. This might also be part of the setup of the nascent soul realm cultivators. Therefore, when she did not understand the situation, she used these words to provoke Qianmo. On one hand, she wanted to buy time, and on the other hand, she wanted to see what the cultivators were planning. However, the reality disappointed her. Qianmo and the rest really did not know why. She could not help but look down on the Golden Core realm cultivators in the discussion hall. But then again, the Golden Core realm cultivators in the discussion hall also had their own difficulties. It was not that they did not want to send spies to investigate, but swordsmen were different from cultivators. Cultivators were considered to be in the open. The discussion hall and the discussion hall were both there and everyone knew about it. Anyone could come and investigate. There was no need to talk about the cultivators who were bought over by the swordsman. Even if they were spies specially trained by the swordsman, they were pure cultivators. The defense array of the Sky Patrol City could distinguish the cultivation level, but it could not distinguish a person's heart. -9. Chapter 2587. As for the sword cultivators, compared to the Dao sect cultivators, they were in the dark. Although there were spies among the Dao sect cultivators, most of them were in the Huan country and would not necessarily come to the battle. How could it be effective to send a cultivator to gather information among the swordsmen? This was also the reason why LV Ruochang knew the cultivators in the meeting hall like the back of her hand, but Qian Mo and the rest knew nothing about the command of the sword cultivators, especially LV Ruochang. As for whether the Sky Patrol City knew, Qian Mo and the rest did not know. This was because according to the information provided by the Sky Patrol City, there were indeed many third-grade illusory swordsmen who were famous in the battle, such as Qin Jian and the rest. This LV Ruochang was not among them. Speaking of which, LV Ruochang did not expect that he would actually succeed in stalling for time. The many flying swords on the ice wall condensed and rushed towards some of the scattered cultivators. The flying swords were very powerful, stirring up the spirit chi of heaven and earth. The different sword cries were quite chaotic, but in this chaos, there was a rhythm. Every flying sword pointed at the 100 or so cultivators in the center. They were unable to mobilize the true essence in their bodies, and they were unable to use the magic tools and magic treasures in their hands. As for the hundreds of cultivators around these 100 cultivators, although they were less affected, the circulation of their true essence was still obscure, and the circulation of their magic power was also much slower. Seeing the flying swords rapidly approaching, they all panicked and took out their magic tools and magic treasures to meet the enemy. Pay attention! Qian Mo saw the situation and knew that things were not going well. He wanted to shout for the disciples to attack in unison according to the formation that they had set up previously. However, seeing that the flying swords were approaching and the disciples had already taken out their magic treasures, he knew that if he continued to shout, it might backfire. Thus, he could only keep quiet. However, when he looked at LV Ruochang with shame and anger, he was surprised. This unknown third-grade illusory sword female swordsman was actually standing there calmly and watching with interest. She did not join the other swordsmen in attacking the three of them. Damn it! Qian Mo gritted his teeth and looked at Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong. He knew that he had no confidence in killing this third-grade illusory swordsman. He had to join forces with the two of them. However, at this moment, Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong looked at the incoming flying swords with great regret. They were helpless. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of the cultivators. The 100 or so cultivators at the tip of the swords only had time to defend themselves. Their protective talismans and magic treasures were instantly pierced by the swords. Broken corpses fell from the sky. The remaining cultivators took out their magic treasures. Although they were sent flying by the swords, these cultivators were able to find a gap and dodge the sharp swords. Once the number of treasures attacking the flying sword increased, the flying sword would gradually be defeated. Withdraw! LV Ruochang's phoenix cry rang out. The dozens of huge flying swords turned into sword gleams that flowed like flowing water. They all flowed towards the Eye City. In just a blink of an eye, the dozens of flying swords killed thousands of Dao sect disciples. Although Qian Mo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong had already seen the casualty figures on the news, and those figures were much higher than the thousands. They had even become numb to the number of casualties. But now that they were faced with such a bloody scene, they couldn't help but feel heartache. Imperial Thunder Sect disciples! Qian Mo waved his hand and a lightning talisman flew into the air. Form a team and attack! Yes! All the surviving disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect cried out, and the disorderly formation quickly changed. Kunlun Sect disciples, form a team and attack the left wing! Yuan Zhongyu knew that this was a good opportunity to attack and hurriedly gave the order. The Kunlun Sect disciples raised their arms and shouted like the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples, their voices echoing throughout the Ice City. "Clear Leaf Sect disciples, we will form a team and attack the right wing!" Jihong screamed. The Clear Leaf Sect disciples were similarly well trained. After they were caught off guard by the sword cultivators' attack, they immediately changed into a formation. What a pity! Seeing the Dao Sect disciples methodically forming their teams, LV Ruochang's eyes flashed with a trace of regret. If this sword had tens of thousands of warriors, would there be a chance for you guys to form a team under my continuous attacks? If this sword doesn't kill all of you and leave your corpses all over the ground, this sword's surname isn't LV. Split your swords into 3 and attack the disciples of the 3 sects. LV Ruochang shouted regretfully. My sword region only has brave warriors who die in battle. There are no cowards. Yes. The tens of thousands of sword gleams had just flown back to the Ice City. The swordsmen were in high spirits as they replied. Attack! The Imperial Thunder Sect disciples didn't care about the sword cultivators' tricks. With a loud shout, they took out their Dharma treasures and other items. Extremely large lightning bolts were produced, flickering as they attacked the sword cultivators standing on top of the Ice City. Rumble! The lightning bolts collided with the Ice City's sword formation above the sword cultivators. The lightning bolts lingered in midair, and the entire front of the ice wall shook slightly. In the lightning bolts, the sword gleams that were like swimming fishes dispersed, and were destroyed. At the same time, the Kunlun sect disciples also took out their Dharma treasures and other items. Dozens of huge fireballs and dozens of huge yellow light balls swallowed the chaotic spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and smashed towards the left wing of the Ice City. Rumble! It was even more powerful than the Imperial Thunder Sect's attack. When the sword gleams on top of the Ice City were destroyed, the entire ice wall also shook, and huge cracks appeared on top of the Ice City. Looking at the Clear Leaf Sect disciples, these tens of thousands of disciples took out their Dharma treasures. They didn't create any illusions, but all their Dharma treasures emitted a faint white light. This light was somewhat similar to Xiaohua's Buddha's light. When all the light connected together, it formed a faint white screen of light. This screen of light absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and covered the Ice City like a huge hand. That seemingly gentle brush actually tore apart the entire right wing of the Ice City's sword formation. Those countless tiny sword gleams were easily torn apart by this faint screen of light. Hiss! LV Ruochang saw how powerful the cultivator's combined attack array was and sucked in a breath of cold air. Her eyes narrowed, and that faint murderous aura surfaced on her beautiful face again. Kill! Just as the 3 sects' attack succeeded, LV Ruochang gave another order. The dozens of sword gleams from before flew out together again, as if they were going to fly past the attacking Dharma treasures and pierce the cultivators. Attack! The cultivators of the various sects didn't wait for the Golden Core Masters to give the order. They didn't even use their Dharma treasures to attack the flying swords that flew out. The number of Dharma treasures obviously exceeded the number of flying swords. Even though the Dharma treasures didn't have any rules, they swarmed together and annihilated the huge flying swords. Kachacha, a series of chaotic sounds, and various colored lights and sword gleams lingered around. Most of the huge flying swords were destroyed by the Dharma treasures, but there were still dozens of flying swords in the core that flew out and killed more than 10 disciples. The Ice City that was just cracked by the flying swords once again flashed with a faint green sword gleam. As the sword gleams danced in the air, the cracks on the Ice City gradually healed. Imperial Thunder Sect disciples split into 2 groups. Qianemo frowned and didn't miss the opportunity to give an order. One group to attack the swordsmen, the other group to attack the Ice City. Yes. The Imperial Thunder Sect disciples roused their spirits. Lightning flashed, forming 2 thunderclouds. One of the thunderbolts was like a sword, piercing towards the swordsman, while the other struck the already cracked Ice City. Kill! LV Ruochang didn't have many swordsmen under him, so he couldn't divide them like this. He could only rely on the Ice City that was already built to block the Imperial Thunder Sect's attack. If Qianemo could divide the disciples into 2 groups, Then how could Kunlun Sect's Yuan Shongyu and Clear Leaf Sect's Jihong not see that the swordsmen were at a disadvantage? They also immediately gave the order to divide the disciples into 2 groups. This way, while the Dao Sect's cultivators attacked the Ice City, they could also attack the swordsmen. When the Dharma treasures flashed past, there were also many swordsmen who fell onto the Ice City. At the very beginning, it was a corpse, and that was a trace of fresh blood. However, there were many corpses, and the corpses piled up like a mountain, and the fresh blood splashed onto the Ice City. The previously colorful Ice City was now filled with blood under the bright sun, and it was extremely strange. The Great War. Only at this moment did the bloodthirsty face reveal its cruel nature. Boom! A series of loud sounds rang out. The Clear Leaf Sect's attack on the right side of the Ice City was broken through first. That green sword gleam flashed past, and the blood-red solid ice slid down the Ice City. Good! Jihong couldn't help but clench her fists. She knew that once the Ice City was broken through, the swordsmen would no longer have anything to block them. All the cultivators would be able to use them to attack the swordsmen. There weren't many swordsmen left here, and they wouldn't be a hindrance to the cultivators. Boom! Boom! After that, another 2 loud sounds rang out. The Imperial Thunder Sect's and Kunlun Sect's ice walls also collapsed. It seemed like the victory of this war was tilted towards the cultivators. Rise, who would have thought that when Lu Ruochang saw that the Ice City was broken through, he didn't panic at all. He let out a low whistle, and the green phoenix sword was slowly retracted into his body. Then, sword gleams surrounded his body, and a huge emerald green flying sword appeared in midair. Woo! The flying sword didn't stab towards the Dao Sect's cultivators, but instead, it went straight into the ground. Hundreds of sword gleams pierced into the ground from the flying sword and shot towards the Ice City's walls at the same time. 1. A series of earth-shaking tremors could be felt. It was as if a giant's hand was growing on top of the city's walls. Under the collapsing ice wall, an even taller and sturdier mud wall slowly emerged from the ground. Isn't this our Dao Sect's spell? Qian Mo was shocked. Does a sword cultivator's sword array have such an effect? Let's quickly order our disciples to attack. Seeing this, Yuan Shongyu was naturally shocked as well. However, his mind was faster than Qian Mo's by a bit. He hurriedly shouted, "It must be because the earth element's spiritual energy here is too abundant. That's why the sword cultivator, Lu Ruochang, is able to set up a sword array and use a spell similar to our Dao Sect's. This must be her last resort. If we wait for her to finish building the wall, the disciples of our 3 sects will suffer a great loss again." -9. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.